My nephew called me an easy woman, so we stopped paying for his university tuition that we had been covering. I am 39 and have been married to my husband, Nick, 42, for over 15 years. It's been a very peaceful relationship for me. The only problem we had was due to infertility caused by a medical condition. We couldn't conceive, and it was devastating because we really wanted to have a child. The adoption laws in our state are very complicated, and we both have demanding jobs, so we decided not to pursue adoption. It didn't make sense to adopt a baby and then not have the time to take care of it. Instead, we decided to help children in need, and we took on the responsibility of financing my sister-in-law's children's education. However, a recent incident has made me question this decision and reconsider continuing to support her kids because of their arrogant behavior. A bit of context. My sister-in-law divorced when her children were young, and since then, she has struggled to get by. Her ex-husband was abusive and an alcoholic, and the child support she received was minimal due to his low income. She works 2 jobs, but her limited income makes it difficult to cover their education expenses. That's why my husband and I decided to help. My sister-in-law has 3 children, ABA 23, Ross 20, and Rastin 17. They were once good kids, but it seems like they've lost their way. ABA, her daughter, is a true star. She graduated from university with honors, started her career at one of the most prestigious multinational companies, and is doing incredibly well. My sister-in-law, and honestly all of us, couldn't be prouder. She was always the smartest and sweetest, and it's amazing to see her thrive. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the boys, Ross and Rastin. They were brilliant as children, but when they hit adolescence, they seemed to lose interest in their studies. The situation has become so bad that I felt the need to write about their behavior. It all started to go downhill when Ross graduated from high school. We asked him about the details of his courses so we could plan for his university tuition. He surprised us by saying he didn't want to go to university and instead wanted us to give him the money in cash. My husband asked him what his plan was, and Ross said he wanted to start a business. When asked what kind of business, Ross didn't have a clear answer. He said he had something in mind, but it wasn't concrete. We told him we didn't need a detailed plan, but we at least wanted to know what kind of business he was thinking about. He gave a vague explanation that he wanted to start an online business. My husband and I were skeptical about investing in his project because his idea wasn't clear, and he didn't have the skills for it. We didn't immediately reject his request, but told him we needed some time to think it over. He agreed, but a few weeks later he started pushing us as if we owed him the money. After much back and forth, my husband and I made it clear that we didn't trust his ability to manage the money and wouldn't invest in his project. Ross got furious, but not directly with us. Instead, he went through my sister-in-law and my mother-in-law. His argument was that the university tuition we had set aside for him was his money, and he should be able to do whatever he wanted with it. I found no logic in this sense of entitlement. Yes, we took on the responsibility of funding his education, and we have the means to help financially, but that doesn't mean he should feel entitled to handouts. My mother-in-law tried to convince us to finance his business idea, but my husband said no. We didn't trust his half-baked plan. My mother-in-law argued that we were breaking our commitment to supporting my sister-in-law's children. My husband made it clear that while we would support his entrepreneurial venture, we wouldn't be contributing financially. Not at this time, anyway. Perhaps, in the future, if we gained confidence in his plans, we could help. We also told him we would still be willing to pay for his university tuition if he decided to study again. After that, there was no further discussion. But I later found out that my mother-in-law sold some of her family heirlooms to fund Ross's business idea. God knows what happened, but Ross's business never took off. Since then, we've been distant from them. Then, spring came, and Ross came knocking at our door to apologize for his rude behavior. He said he now intended to go to university and asked us to fund his tuition. His tone was still hostile, but the distance was evident. He used to be friendly and talkative, but now he was only offering brief, courteous exchanges. 2 or 3 months ago, it was Rastin's 17th birthday, and my sister-in-law invited us to dinner. The evening went as usual. Ross was also there but was silent, responding only with nods or one-word answers. Then everything changed when Rustin made a hurtful comment about me. He said, "How could Nick, my husband, find you attractive when you're so average and ugly?" I looked at him in shock and disbelief. He added, "It's hard to believe anyone could find you attractive. I just couldn't process it." Nick exploded and confronted him. The worst part was that before Nick could react, everyone else, my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, and Rose, laughed at the comment like it was some sort of joke. They only stopped when Nick got angry. My mother-in-law tried to downplay it, saying, "He's just a kid. He was trying to be funny." Nick demanded that Rustin take back his words and apologize immediately. Rustin defended himself, claiming it was just a passing comment, meant to lighten the mood. Nick was furious, insisting that making disrespectful comments about someone's appearance wasn't humor. Rustin kept justifying himself until Nick interrupted, shouting, "You apologize now or face the consequences." The room went silent. I was drowning in embarrassment, anger, and pain. Nick looked at my sister-in-law for support, but instead of reprimanding Rustin for his disrespect, she said, "Calm down, Nick. People can have their opinions." Nick stood up from the table and said, "We're not having any conversation until you all apologize." He gave me a pat on the back and said, "Let's go." I stood up, and my mother-in-law grabbed my hand, saying, "It's his birthday. Don't ruin the moment over something trivial. He's just a kid, but you're an adult, right? You should know how to handle this kind of criticism from kids." I let go of her hand and said, "He's not a kid, and even if he were, it's your daughter's responsibility to teach him manners, but clearly, she's failed." While we were having this conversation, I noticed, out of the corner of my eye, that Rustin and Rose were looking at each other and smiling, clearly enjoying the humiliation they'd caused me. I looked at them and said, "It's not funny. You're cruel, and you'll pay for your behavior." I left before anyone could respond. A week after the incident, I came home and found my sister-in-law and mother-in-law arguing with my husband. I walked in, pretending they weren't there, and went to my room. My sister-in-law asked to speak with me. They both apologized and said they had scolded Rustin after we left, and that he felt guilty for his behavior. I asked, "Okay, where is he? Why haven't I gotten an apology from him?" My sister-in-law said she was apologizing on his behalf. The truth was, Rustin was too proud to apologize, but since they needed our money, my sister-in-law did it for him. Her apology was so superficial that it meant nothing to me. Her argument was that Rustin was just an angry teenager who didn't know his limits, and that's why he got carried away with his humor. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law were so rigid that they'd do anything to defend their kids. But, in the end, my sister-in-law said I should discipline my own children. Her tone, however, said the opposite. I told them it would be better if they controlled their emotions and that this would be the last time they spoke to me that way. Since then, I've been keeping a low profile. Despite the incident, we processed the payment for Ross's next semester. A week later, we attended Nick's grandfather's 75th birthday. My mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and both of the boys were also there. ABA couldn't attend due to work. I wore a dress with a deep neckline. I like wearing off-the-shoulder dresses and ones with plunging necklines. When I made eye contact with the boys, I could feel their gazes, and it made me uncomfortable. They were openly staring at my chest. I felt so disgusted. I mean, they were half my age and they were looking at me like that. But I ignored it and tried to enjoy the evening with everyone else. During the celebration, I made a toast for Nick's grandfather. When I finished, everyone raised their glasses except for the two boys, who exchanged smirking glances. It made me feel so uncomfortable that I wanted to leave right away. A while later, as I passed by them, I felt like they said something and laughed as they looked at me. It was nothing short of harassment. They were acting like street harassers. I had enough, so I decided to confront them. I stopped and asked, "What's the problem?" They were surprised. I asked, "What's so funny about me that you find it amusing every time you see me?" They froze and mumbled a response. I told them, I'm not a teenager who will let myself be harassed by your behavior. Rustin got nervous and stayed silent, but Ross stepped in and said they were just relaxing and their smiles had nothing to do with me. I told them it would be better if they controlled their behavior instead of defending themselves. I turned to leave, not wanting to hear any more. I was just 2 steps away when I heard Ross call me a bitch, and both of them laughed. I immediately turned around, and they stopped laughing, looking uncomfortable. I asked, "What did you just say?" Rustin impulsively started apologizing, saying, "I'm sorry, it wasn't about you. We were looking at something on the phone." I saw Ross grab Rustin's wrist, and Rustin stopped talking. Ross said, "We didn't say anything. Maybe the music was too loud, and you thought you heard something." I lost my patience and shouted, "If you have the guts, repeat what you just said." I was about to slap them when Nick stepped in. I told him what had happened, and he was furious. By then, others had gathered, including my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Ross argued that he hadn't said anything, and I was just making it up. I asked, "If you didn't say anything, then why did Rustin say it wasn't about me?" Rustin changed his story in front of everyone, claiming he only apologized because he thought he had offended me somehow. It didn't make any sense. We had to calm things down for Grandpa's sake since he was getting anxious. We didn't want to ruin his big day. I stayed for dinner, and Nick was constantly by my side, but the rest of the night was awkward. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law kept giving me strange looks. The next morning, ABA called me. She had heard about the incident from someone and felt bad for me. She said I should have slapped each of them immediately and even suggested that we cut off their funding, since they didn't respect the value we added to their lives. While I completely agreed with Nick's decision, she asked what I would have done in my place. Update 1. Thank you all for validating our actions. Nick and I have decided to withdraw the financial support we've been giving them. We haven't been in contact with them since the incident, and Nick said they should come to us first if they want anything. We don't need them, they need us. So we stayed out of touch and they didn't approach us until they needed money. Rustin graduated from high school and wanted to attend a private design university with an outrageous tuition fee. Look at his ego and audacity. Neither my sister-in-law nor Rustin called or visited us. Rustin simply sent Nick an email with his university details and a payment link as if nothing happened. Nick ignored the email. Instead of calling or visiting us, Rustin just followed up by sending a reminder email 2 weeks later. Then my mother-in-law called Nick and said, "Honey, Rustin's been waiting for you to pay his tuition. It seems like you didn't see his email." Nick responded, "Rustin, who? I don't know her." There was a moment of silence, maybe because she was confused by Nick's response. She then asked, "Are you still upset over that trivial matter? Didn't the boys clear up the misunderstanding? I'm sure your wife exaggerated the situation." Nick, tired of all the nonsense, said, "Enough. We've made the decision to cut off their support entirely. We don't know who they are or what they'll do with their lives, and we don't care." My mother-in-law tried to convince him, saying these conflicts shouldn't jeopardize their lives and that we should be more mature and forgive them. Nick simply said, "No thanks," and hung up. Minutes later, my sister-in-law started bombarding Nick's phone with calls, which he ignored. Then she began sending apologetic messages, saying she would make the boys apologize in person, but we shouldn't deprive them of their education. Nick responded that it was too late. They should have realized this much earlier. The next day, my sister-in-law showed up at our door with my mother-in-law. Nick didn't answer them and told them, "We don't welcome disrespectful people into our home or our lives, so it's better if you stay away from us." My sister-in-law started crying, saying she and the boys were sorry for what happened and wanted another chance. Nick asked, "If the boys are really sorry, why didn't they come with you to apologize?" My mother-in-law intervened, saying, "You know the boys are young and hormonal. They don't realize the consequences of their actions, but adults like us should be aware of ours. We shouldn't make them pay such a high price for their childish jokes. Their careers, their lives are at stake." Her defensive tone made me furious, and I told her exactly what she deserved to hear. Calling your aunt a bitch is not a childish joke. It's pure machismo. Then they lied and tried to make me look bad in front of everyone, which was malicious. Commenting on my appearance was tasteless and disrespectful. These actions have consequences, and you play a role in this by allowing that behavior. I'm sorry they'll suffer because their mother did a terrible job raising them. They'll suffer all their lives if they don't change their attitude, and no one but you will be responsible for that. They both scowled and looked at Nick, hoping he'd intervene, but he stood firm and told them to leave. I slammed the door behind them. I don't know if it was the right thing to do, but it's what I did. That same night, ABA called me and praised me for standing up for myself. She said we should have made this decision the first time Rustin commented on my appearance. ABA told me that my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law's mom, had called her a witch for siding with me, but ABA had confronted her. My sister-in-law asked ABA to finance Rustin's university tuition, just like Ross's. ABA lost her temper with my mother-in-law, telling her to stop pampering her children. She told her that instead of defending them, she should hold them accountable for their actions and let them handle things on their own. My sister-in-law then asked ABA to stop acting like my puppet and to support her brothers. ABA replied that she had made her decision and didn't want to be associated with people who embarrass women by calling them whores. This made me reflect on my sister-in-law's character. On one hand, she was begging ABA to help with her daughter, even though ABA had just started her career. How could she possibly take on the responsibility of her brother's education? Why couldn't they get a loan if they were so determined to study, which I doubted very much? Update 2. New information. Let me start by answering a common question from my readers. Many of you asked why we decided to finance these narcissistic kids. Well, they weren't bad when they were children. All three of them were hardworking and well-behaved. My sister-in-law, though not warm or friendly, was at least civil with me. We took responsibility for shaping their lives for a better future. The oldest, ABA, made the most of the opportunity and now works at a multinational company in Europe. But the boys went off track, and my sister-in-law never even tried to correct them. So, after we cut off their financial support, I started hearing many horrible things they said about me. They claimed I wore revealing dresses to compensate for my ugly face, that I was vain and useless, and that I had manipulated Nick into cutting ties with his own family. I took it in stride. My sister-in-law had been cut off from her savings account, so it was natural for her to talk badly about us. I was fine with our decision. Months passed, and one day Nick got a desperate call from my mother-in-law. Ross and Rasten had been arrested by the police for their involvement in illegal drug activities. While Ross was arrested, Rasten was taken into custody for further investigation. My mother-in-law begged Nick to bail them out and save their lives. Nick hesitated for a moment, because after everything that had happened, he wasn't convinced they were completely innocent. Still, it was a matter of their lives. My sister-in-law insisted her sons were innocent and that they had been used as scapegoats by their friends. Nick wasn't fully convinced, but he gave them the benefit of the doubt and went to the police station to get the details. I didn't stop him from supporting his family, but I didn't go with him. My sister-in-law and my mother-in-law were also at the station. The police said it was a non-bailable offense, and they would have to appear in court. Nick involved his lawyer to get the whole story, and the truth came out, exposing my sister-in-law's golden children. It turned out Ross was actually involved in drug-related activities. He was running a network distributing illegal substances to college students and was even planning to expand his network to high school students through Rasten, the younger one. Rasten narrowly escaped a more intense interrogation because he was just a few months away from turning 18. My sister-in-law begged Nick to hire a lawyer for Ross so he could get him out as soon as possible. But after learning the truth, Nick refused to spend his money on him. He said, "Let the judge decide what's best for him." Thanks to my sister-in-law's luck, Ross received a lighter sentence because he was a rookie in the business and had been influenced by a veteran who pulled him into the world of crime. Ross had been seduced by the easy money that came with it. The cost of his bail to get him out before finishing his sentence was incredibly high, and Nick refused to contribute. After that, my sister-in-law openly turned bitter toward us. She even claimed that I had falsely accused Ross to get revenge. And guess what? Some foolish people believed her story. I could only laugh at those who thought they could fool the police and play with state law. My sister-in-law didn't stop there. She even disinherited ABA for defending me and refusing to pay the huge bail for Ross. Currently, Rasten has been released from the correctional facility, while Ross continues to serve his sentence in prison. I'm not sure how their careers or lives will turn out after this incident, but honestly, I don't care at all. Recently, my mother-in-law visited Nick at his office and told him that she was disinheriting him because he had abandoned his sister and nephews when they were at their lowest point. Nick's heart was broken that his mother never appreciated everything we did for her and for my sister-in-law's children. She never defended us, but was quick to disinherit Nick when he refused to help her criminal grandson. We've learned a tough lesson. You can give your life for someone, but if that person doesn't want to see your kindness, they never will. We plan to stay out of contact with them for the foreseeable future. Despite all the problems, we will continue appreciating our good relationship with ABA, who has always been nothing but loving and grateful to us. Update 3. It's been a while since I last updated my story, and I wanted to share how things have been over the past 2 years. I've received many messages of support, advice, and even some criticism, but I'm grateful for everything that has been shared with me. Sometimes sharing our experiences allows us to see the situation from a different perspective. These 2 years have been full of changes, and while the situation with some family members is still complicated, there are others who continue to be a light in our lives. I know my last update ended on a rather dramatic note, but time has allowed many things to settle, even if it hasn't been in the most conventional way. ABA is still that wonderful exception that proves not all the decisions we made were in vain. She's been traveling for work recently, but she came to visit not long ago, and it was a joy to have her at home. She always surprises me with how loving, polite, and grateful she is. Over this time, many people have told me in the comments that perhaps I shouldn't have gotten so involved with my sister-in-law's children, that it would have saved me a lot of headaches. And while they're mostly right, ABA is the exception that shows it was worth it. Every time I see how her professional and personal life has flourished, I feel proud to have been part of her journey. During her last visit, ABA confided in me that if she ever decides to get married, she wants me to be her maid of honor and Nick to walk her down the aisle. I was deeply touched by this, even though she doesn't have any concrete wedding plans yet. She did tell me she's seeing someone, though she didn't want to go into too many details, but she seems happy, and that's the most important thing. She is a testament to the fact that sometimes investing in the right people can be the most rewarding thing in the world. Rasten, on the other hand, has had a much harder path. After everything that happened, he ended up working in a mechanic shop. It's an honest job, and I'm glad he found something that gives him stability, but I can't help but think about how things could have been different if he had made other choices. After his run-in with the law, his educational opportunities evaporated. Even if he had managed to get money for university, which I don't think would have been possible given his family's financial situation, it's unlikely any institution would have accepted him because of his criminal record. In fact, the university that had initially accepted him before everything blew up revoked his admission once they found out about his past. It's sad to see how drastically his future changed, but at least he's managed to find a way to move forward. We haven't had direct contact with him, but I know from others that he hasn't had any more legal issues. As for Ross, his situation is a bit more bleak. He's still serving his sentence and has several years ahead of him before he's eligible for parole. The last I heard, he had been studying in prison. While the circumstances are terrible, I take some comfort in knowing that he's at least trying to improve himself academically. I always thought Ross had potential, but he got lost along the way, seduced by easy money and bad influences. I don't want him back in our lives, but I genuinely hope that this time will help him find his way. Maybe when he gets out, he can find a way to rebuild his life away from crime and bad decisions. After all, I believe no one is completely lost, and I hope he can do something positive with his future. As for my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, I don't have much updated information. I know they've tried to contact Nick several times, claiming they want to repair the relationship, but Nick wants nothing to do with them. He made the decision to cut all ties, and to this day he remains firm in that stance. My mother-in-law has apparently insisted several times that we should be the family we once were, but the reality is that idealized family she remembers never existed. There was always an underlying layer of manipulation and unfair expectations. On the other hand, my sister-in-law has tried the same with sporadic attempts to reach out, but Nick has always been very clear that he doesn't want to get involved with her or her children again. For him, the relationship ended the day all the lies and the damage that his own mother and sister were willing to cause to defend the indefensible became clear. We will continue to maintain our relationship with ABA, who is the only one who has always shown gratitude and love toward us. My parents gave the house I bought to my sister. I stopped paying the mortgage and the bank auctioned it off. I'm 28 years old, and I had been paying the mortgage on a house I bought for my parents, only to find out they gave it to my 25-year-old sister. Even worse, they didn't even bother to tell me. I've always known my parents loved my sister more than me, but I never imagined it would come to this. My parents have a toxic and deep love for my sister, but sadly, they have nothing for me. As the older of two siblings, they always had higher expectations for me, while I was instilled with a sense of responsibility from a very young age. My younger sister, Perry, was treated like a princess. Not exactly like one, because my parents don't have many resources, but she always got what she wanted. My parents never had academic expectations for her. She could explore her passions and hobbies, while I was buried in my studies. It's always been like this. My parents weren't exactly subtle about their expectations for me. They made it clear that I had to build a solid career, and I couldn't fail in my studies. After I graduated high school, my parents took out loans and spent their savings to pay for my technical school. I suggested that instead of draining their savings, they could take out a loan for my education, and I would pay it back once I found a job. My parents opposed the loan because of its high interest rates. They said I would end up paying back 1.5 times the principal, and I was too young to understand the complexities of loans. I thought if they said so, it must be right. I was only 18 at the time. Little did I know, they were saving me from the burden of a loan, only to take advantage of me later. After finishing university, I landed a good job in the tech sector. Exactly what they wanted for me. They were undoubtedly proud of me, but I always felt like some kind of commodity, as if they had invested in me expecting something in return. They never missed a chance to say, "We sacrificed so much for you. Don't forget where you come from." At first, it seemed harmless. I thought they just wanted to keep me humble. But over time, I realized it was emotional manipulation. Emotional blackmail is their specialty. As I started working, the pressure increased. Every time I visited, my dad would hint that I shouldn't forget he spent his savings to pay for my education, and how I needed to work hard to repay their sacrifices. I knew my parents needed a house. They had been saving for years, but they spent that money on my education. I remember shortly after starting my career, barely a year in, I went home for a vacation. While we were having dinner, my dad looked me straight in the eye and said, "We did our part by paying for your education. Now it's your turn. You should plan to buy a house for us soon. We can't live renting forever, right?" I felt a lump in my stomach when he said that. I knew they expected me to buy them a house, but not so soon. I hadn't even been working a year yet. I still shared an apartment with 2 roommates because I couldn't afford one on my own, and my parents were already asking me to buy them a house. What the hell? I protested. "Dad, I just started my job. I can't even afford rent for my own apartment. How do you expect me to take on such a huge financial commitment?" He said he wasn't asking for it immediately, but that he was planting the idea in my head so I could plan and work hard to make it happen. My mom chimed in with a deceptively sweet voice. "We paid for your university. Without us, you wouldn't be where you are now. Think of it as paying us back." I didn't have the heart to argue. They weren't wrong. I was where I was thanks to their sacrifices. But sometimes their sermons were too much to bear, and I wanted to scream, "Who asked you to do that for me?" But I didn't have the courage to confront them. I kept a fair distance from them and only answered their calls when it was urgent. Visiting them was out of the question after that dinner conversation. I used work as an excuse to avoid them. However, the obligation to buy them a house stayed permanently in my mind. So, after 5 years of saving and working hard, I gave in. I bought them a modest, nice house in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't extravagant, but it was comfortable. Everything seemed fine. I thought it was the least I could do for my parents after everything they had done for me. I paid the mortgage for 3 years, even paying a bit extra to clear it off early. I had other plans in life. I wanted to buy my own house, travel, start a family, etc. I couldn't keep this loan indefinitely. After buying them the house, my parents stopped bothering me about helping them. They proudly showed it off to their friends and family, boasting that their investment had paid off. It didn't bother me, but it didn't close the gap between us either. I kept my distance and didn't visit them often. 2 days ago, I decided to visit my parents after months of being caught up with work. I didn't give them a heads up. I wanted to surprise them, but there was a surprise waiting for me. When I arrived at the house, I saw Perry's car parked outside. I thought she was just visiting, and I was glad about the idea of a family reunion. Perry had gotten married and moved out when my parents were still living in the rented house. It had been years since I last saw her at her wedding. I knocked on the door, and Perry answered in her pajamas. I thought she was just visiting for a short while. We greeted each other with a hug, and then she asked, "What are you doing here?" I jokingly replied, "Could ask you the same thing." I walked in and asked, "Where are Mom and Dad?" She sat on the sofa and casually answered, "Oh, they moved." I froze. "They moved? What do you mean they moved? This is their house." Perry shrugged, as if it wasn't a big deal. "They didn't tell you?" "Actually, they gave it to me. Now I live here." I felt like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. "They gave you the house? The house I've been paying for?" "Yes," she said, indifferent, as if it made total sense. "Mom and Dad said I needed it more. You know, I'm planning on having a baby soon, and they thought I should have the house." I was stunned. I asked, "Where are they living now?" She answered, "They're renting an apartment across town." As if it was the most normal thing in the world. I left without saying another word, my mind filled with rage. I drove straight to their new apartment, not caring that I was showing up unannounced. When my mom opened the door, I wasted no time. "What the hell is going on? Perry just told me you gave her the house I bought, the house I've been paying for. Can you explain this to me?" My mom had the audacity to smile, as if it were no big deal. "Calm down, sweetheart. Come in. We didn't think it would bother you." I walked in but didn't bother to sit down. I wanted answers. Somehow my voice rose. "You didn't think it would bother me? You gave away the house I bought without even talking to me about it. How could you think it wasn't important for me to know?" My mom sighed, as if I was the unreasonable one. "Well, we thought that since things are going so well for you, you wouldn't mind. Perry's planning on having a baby. Don't you want your future nieces and nephews to be born in a stable home, not in a rented house where they'll grow up in an unstable environment? Now that they have the house, they won't need to worry about rent and can focus on other things, like the well-being of their child." I snapped. "I don't care where my nephews and nieces are born and raised. I don't mind if they live in a rented house. We did. I still live in a rental, and it's not my problem. Thinking about them is Perry's problem, and her husband's. If they want stability, they should get better jobs." Hearing the commotion, my dad came out of the bedroom and asked, "What's all this fuss about?" "She needs financial security. We had to give her the house. She didn't have the same opportunities you did. We didn't pay for her college, so she deserves the house." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's what parents can say, and no one challenges them. I replied, "You didn't pay for her college because she never even went to college. She dropped out of high school. Remember?" They refused to understand the gravity of what they did. They kept saying, "You're successful, you can buy another house." "Sure, I will, but it will be for me, not for you." I didn't even know how to respond. It felt like the world was crashing down on me. I couldn't understand their logic. I simply left their apartment, furious, checked into a hotel, and I've been here ever since. I honestly don't know what to do. I can't keep paying the mortgage now that I know the truth, but figuring out how to handle the situation is a real challenge. I know my parents can't pay the mortgage, and there's no doubt my sister couldn't either. This drama happened on Friday, and today is Sunday. I have my flight back on Tuesday. At first, I thought about booking a flight right away and leaving, but when I calmed down, I realized I had other things to do here. I wanted to check how much was left on the loan since I had been paying more than usual. I thought I'd paid ahead. Before my visit, I asked my dad about the mortgage balance. He said he needed to check with the bank manager. I texted him to take me to the bank tomorrow so I could get more details on the remaining balance. Update 1. There's more to this story, and I'm literally shaking as I write this. We just got back from the bank, and what I discovered left me in shock. The extra money I had been paying towards the mortgage never actually went to the bank. My dad had only been paying the actual mortgage amount and used the extra money for his own expenses, specifically to pay for the rent on his apartment. I had been living so frugally, below my means, saving just a little more and paying off the mortgage early. When the bank manager showed me the monthly deposits, I told him there must be some mistake, because we were paying nearly 1.33 times the mortgage amount. I even opened my transaction history to show how much money I had been sending to my dad every month. Then my dad intervened and said, "The manager's data is correct. We're only paying what's due on the mortgage." At first, I thought my dad was confused, that he didn't understand the situation, but then he grabbed my arm and said, "The records are correct. Let's talk about this later." I felt another blow. I was dizzy, anticipating another betrayal. I just sat there stunned while the manager finished the meeting, giving us details about the remaining mortgage balance and other options to consolidate loans, etc. I stayed silent. As soon as the manager left us alone, my dad took me aside and asked, "Why are we talking about the extra money you sent for the mortgage?" I answered, furious, "Of course, I sent it for the mortgage. What else would I send extra money for? I told you that money was for the mortgage." What he said next left me speechless. "I thought you were sending it for our expenses. I used it to pay our rent." I just stared at him, then sat down, burying my head in my hands. What do I do with my parents now? My dad sat next to me and asked me not to cause a scene, saying it wasn't a big deal. I exploded. "It's not a big deal? You made me buy you a house and then gave it to Perry without even telling me. On top of that, you used the extra mortgage money to pay your rent. Let me tell you something. My dad is not a man who stays quiet and lets his son confront him, especially not in a public place." He replied angrily, "Don't you dare raise your voice at me. You didn't do me a favor by buying us that house. I spent all my savings paying for your college. I don't need to explain to you what I do with that house. You sent the money and I paid the mortgage on time. What's the problem? If I used the extra to cover our rent, it's not like we were asking for more." I was furious with his words. The extra money was meant to pay off the mortgage early, not to finance his new apartment. I stormed out of the bank, still fuming. As I walked down the street, I could hear my dad shouting my name, but I didn't look back. I just kept walking until I reached the subway station. My mom called me 4 or 5 times and sent me a text asking me to come home so we could sit down and discuss the matter. I didn't respond. I didn't want to discuss anything. I had made my decision and I was going to do what I believed was right. No more of their toxicity. Update 2. Sorry for the spelling and grammar mistakes in my last update. I was shaking with rage, and then I had to edit it to make it readable. I also didn't answer some of the common questions I received in the comments, so let me address a few things now. Some asked if my parents are Asian. No, we're not. Let me clear that up. Asians aren't the only community whose parents push their kids to extremes. I don't want to reveal my ethnic background. Sorry. Some also asked who the loan was in the name of. Well, the loan was in my dad's name. I didn't confirm that at first because I wanted to buy a new car and maybe a house in a few years. Having this loan associated with me would have affected my future loans. So I'm glad I made that decision since it's now making it easier to execute my plan. Moving on to the next update. The next day, I went back to my normal life. A month passed, and I didn't send my dad the mortgage payment as usual. As expected, he tried to contact me on the first day of the month, only to find out that I had blocked him. Not just him, I blocked my mom, my sister, and her husband. I don't want any more drama in my life. I made my decision. I stopped paying the mortgage. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me anymore. If they wanted to give the house to Perry, then fine. Let her handle the payments. Let her be responsible for it. When my parents realized what I had done, they completely lost it. I received some calls and voice messages from unknown numbers. Maybe they used their friends' numbers, I don't know. The messages said things like, "You can't just stop paying. We don't have the money to cover the mortgage." I laughed inside. Well, that's not my problem anymore. I blocked those numbers too. But that wasn't all. 3 days later, I found my dad at the door of my house when I got back from work. He was furious and told me, "You can't just leave like that. You owe us. We paid for your college, we raised you. Who do you think you are?" I immediately replied, "I've already paid you back. Do you realize how much I've spent on that mortgage? It's more than what you paid for my tuition. I don't owe you anything." He called me ungrateful, but I cut him off, saying, "No, you can't make me feel guilty anymore. I've done enough. I'm not paying the house, the rent, or anything else. You made your decision. Now deal with the consequences." They treated me like a commodity, investing in me by sending me to college, and now they just wanted to squeeze me dry for the rest of my life. I'm not a commodity. I walked out of the hallway and drove off in my car. I didn't go into my apartment because I knew he'd follow me inside, and I wasn't ready to deal with the drama. When I came back later that night, he was gone. My mom tried calling me several times from new numbers, leaving desperate voicemail messages. Even Perry left me a long message with a different number, saying she needed the house for her future family and that I was being selfish for not helping. Selfish? I've been paying for everything while she's done nothing. I didn't give in to any of their manipulations. I'm done with them. I've cut all ties completely. Update number 3. The house was sold at auction, and Perry was forced to move out. As I mentioned before, Perry couldn't afford the mortgage, and my parents were financially drowning, paying for the rent on their apartment. They couldn't handle the mortgage, the rent, and all the household expenses. When I stopped making payments, I knew this would happen. It was just a matter of time. After almost a year, I found out the house had been sold. My parents did everything they could to save it, using their savings and cashing in their retirement money, but it wasn't enough. Things also got tense between Perry and my parents during this time. While they were struggling to pay the mortgage, they asked Perry and her husband to contribute 50%. But she refused, saying the house was a gift to her and that my parents should cover the full mortgage. That's when my parents realized the mistake they'd made. But by then, it was too late. I think my parents did the right thing by letting the bank auction and sell the house, rather than continuing to pay the mortgage and letting Perry stay there without contributing. The house was auctioned off, and my dad got back a significant amount of money, part of the down payment and the monthly payments he'd been making all these years. With that, he's more than recovered what he invested in me. I know it's my money, but I don't expect a single cent of it back. I have to let it go. At least now they can't say they did me a favor by paying for my college. I've paid them back with interest. I don't feel guilty for cutting them out of my life. From what I've heard from my cousins and uncles, my parents have moved into a smaller apartment to reduce rent costs. They've saved the money they received from the house sale for their retirement. They've been telling everyone that they don't want to rely on me when they get old and that they're working to take care of themselves. They've also cut off all financial support to Perry and told her she has to figure things out on her own with her family. Yes, she tried to manipulate them again, saying they paid for my college and secured my future, so they were obligated to secure hers. But now my parents have come back to reality and aren't giving in to her demands. Well, I'm glad for them. In the meantime, I've rented an apartment for myself. Finally, I'll have some privacy. I've also started saving to buy my own house, a place that will be mine and only mine. It's not easy to distance yourself from family, but sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who take the most advantage of you. Took me a long time to realize this, but I don't regret my decision. Family or not, I deserve better than being treated like a walking bank account. Update number 4. I've noticed that a lot of people still have questions, so I'll clarify a few points before going into what has happened recently. One of the most common questions has been how much my parents spent on my education and how much I've spent on the mortgage for the house that was supposedly for them. Well, even though I don't have the exact figures, I can tell you that my education cost around $40,000. As for the mortgage, including the extra payments I made to pay it off early, but which my parents used to pay for their apartment rent, I've paid about $52,000. As you can see, I've more than paid them back. I no longer feel that I owe them anything. Some people have also asked about Perry. I want to clarify that she didn't end up on the street, as some suggested. She and her husband are living in her in-laws' house. So no, I'm not that bad brother who left his poor sister homeless. Also, the house was never meant for her. It was for my parents. Perry and her husband could have taken over the mortgage payments, but as always, they didn't want to make the effort. The house was in my parents' name, and they were the ones who decided to give it to Perry. So they were free to pay the rest. There was nothing I could do, and certainly nothing I would have wanted to do for them. Now, for the real update, my dad came back. Looks like he has enough money for a plane ticket to visit me. Well, let me correct myself, to demand something from me, not to visit. He came to ask for more money. This time, he wants me to buy them another house after everything that happened with the first one, the one they gave to their favorite daughter. Now, they expect me to buy them another one. He told me they deserve a house because they've made so many sacrifices for us, their children. It always comes back to the university, reminding me of the great sacrifice they made to pay for my education, which of course, never fails to come up in any conversation with my parents. And, of course, he mentioned that they gave a house to their daughter, as if that wasn't the height of irony, considering the house was originally for them, not for her. According to him, they've already done their job as parents, so now they deserve their own house. I made it very clear that, in no way will I buy another house for them. The money I've been saving is for a down payment on my own house, not to solve their problems. Once again, I told them that their opportunity to have a house was wasted when they decided to give it to Perry. They should go ask her to buy them one now. I'd love to see what kind of response they'd get from her. My dad stayed in the city for a few more days and asked me to think about it and that we could talk again. However, I had a work trip those days, so I didn't talk to him again. Or rather, he couldn't talk to me because I blocked his numbers. He hasn't been able to reach me. When I returned to my apartment after the trip, he was gone, and I haven't heard from him since. As for me, I'm about to reach my savings goal for a down payment on a house. I'm very close, and if everything goes well, the next time I write here, I hope to share the news that I'll finally be a homeowner of a modest place I can call home. Update number 5. Here I am to tell you that I've been able to buy my own house. I still have work to do, like buying furniture and other things, but I finally have a roof over my head that I can call mine. I read all your comments and advice, and as many of you suggested, I haven't told anyone, not even posted it on social media. I've only told a small group of friends who have no connection to my parents or family. They are friends I've made here in this city, so there's no way this news can reach my parents. I don't want to risk them doing what I've read in other posts, like asking me for the house to give it to my pregnant sister or something like that. So, I'm being extremely careful with this information. I don't want to end up in a mama bear situation where they ask for the house for the sake of the family. I joke, saying I'd even like to have an electric fence around the house to keep the entitled parents away. But honestly, I've learned from Reddit that the best thing is to keep this information secret, at least until I can set solid boundaries. Now, instead of advice on how to deal with parents like this, I'm here asking for advice on something more enjoyable: decorating my new home. If there's one thing I'm not good at, it's decorating. When I lived with roommates, there was always someone else in charge of that, and when I moved into a rented place, it was already furnished, so I never had to worry too much. But now that I have this empty space, a blank canvas, I feel a bit intimidated. I don't want to ruin it and turn it into a place with no personality or bad taste. AITA for telling my roommate I will be charging him for future help on his computer due to his learned incompetence. For context, my roommate, 31M, and I are generally good friends. We went to college together and often hang out, watching TV shows and playing card games. I'm 27F, and I'm pretty tech-savvy. My boyfriend, 33M, works in IT, and together we enjoy playing video games, especially MMORPGs. The issue is that my roommate is terrible with technology to an almost inexcusable level. Despite being able to Google things or use trial and error, whenever he runs into any technical issue, he immediately says he doesn't know what to do and expects someone to fix it for him. This has become a constant source of frustration for me. I've tried being patient and explaining how to solve problems, but every time he encounters a challenge again, he just waits for someone to fix it instead of trying to figure it out himself. I've told him to Google things or follow a tutorial, but he just whines that he doesn't get it. It's like he never makes an effort to learn, and I'm getting tired of being his tech support. I've talked to him about this, and he tells me that he never had a computer growing up and just never got good at using them. While I understand that he didn't have much experience, I don't think it's an excuse, as I didn't have a lot of things growing up either, but I still learned how to use them. Finally, I got so frustrated that I told him he had 3 options whenever my boyfriend and I are gaming. 1. Don't join. 2. Join and figure it out on your own by Googling, or stop being a chore for others. 3. Pay me $10 per incident of incompetence or asking for help until he gets tired of wasting money and learns to solve things on his own. He hasn't responded yet, but I feel like I might be crossing a line. On one hand, I want him to stop relying on others, but on the other, I might be being too harsh. So, ITA for telling him I'll charge him for help? AITA for my reaction to my brother's gift? For some background, I'm 24M, and my family does a yearly weekend trip every December, renting a nice Airbnb and doing various activities. The trip usually has some outings geared towards the guys, like the gun range or axe throwing, and others geared towards the women, shopping trips or water park visits. I've been openly gay for 8 years now, and while most of my family has accepted that, my older brother Isaac, 28M, is the exception. Isaac tends to poke fun at people and enjoys getting a reaction, which the family finds hilarious. Generally, I don't mind this, but ever since I came out, he has consistently made my sexuality the punchline of his jokes. I've asked him multiple times not to make jokes about my sexuality because it hurts me, but he continues to do so, despite knowing how it makes me feel. Fast forward to the last night of the trip. I had separated from the guys for the activities since I thought the women's events seemed more fun. When we were all gathered in the living room to exchange gifts, Isaac suddenly announces that he got me a gift this year because he felt bad I had missed the guys' activities. He hands me a bag to open in front of everyone. I open the bag, and inside was a fruitcake from Fleet Farm. Isaac starts laughing hysterically, and the rest of the family looks at me because I'm not laughing. I stood up, told Isaac I didn't find his gift funny, and went out onto the balcony to get some fresh air. The rest of the night, Isaac tried to tell me I was being ungrateful, especially since he hadn't gotten anyone else a gift. This led to a long yelling match. Now, the family is divided. Some think I overreacted and that I should lighten up about his jokes, while others think my reaction was justified. So, AITA for my reaction to Isaac's gift? Am I the asshole for never giving away anything to my neighbor? I live in a large, upper-middle-class neighborhood with around 1,500 homes. We have a few Facebook groups where neighbors often give things away, sell items, offer services, or ask for help. The community is generally very friendly and generous. People frequently post about items they no longer need, and it's common to see someone offering free goods, whether it's baby gear, household items, or even tickets to local events. About a year ago, when I was 1 month postpartum, I decided to give away all the formula samples I had received in the mail and from my OBGYN. I had around 8 small cans of various formulas, so I made a post in the Facebook group offering them for free. Sarah, one of my neighbors, was the first to comment on the post. However, I didn't check the post for a while, and I ended up receiving a message from another neighbor. I responded to her first, and she came to pick up the formula. Afterward, I marked the Facebook post as claimed. That's when Sarah messaged me, upset that she had been the first to comment and had been waiting all day for me to reach out. She said she really needed the formula for her baby. I apologized and explained that I responded to the first person who messaged me, not the one who commented first. I didn't think it was a big deal at the time. After all, I figured whoever was quickest to message me would get it. But Sarah was quite upset and didn't seem to understand. She said it wasn't fair, and I felt uncomfortable with her tone, so I just dropped it, thinking that it was a misunderstanding that would blow over. A few months later, there was another post in the Facebook group offering a jogging stroller for free. I commented on the post and, of course, Sarah did too. The person offering it responded to me quickly, saying that the stroller had already been claimed. I didn't think much of it until later when Sarah messaged me accusing me of picking up the stroller. I told her that I hadn't taken it and that the post said it was claimed by someone else. She seemed convinced that I had taken it, even though I had no idea where the stroller was or who had picked it up. She said she had walked a mile to get the stroller, only to find that it wasn't there, and she was really upset. I repeated that I didn't take it, and I suggested that she reach out to the person giving it away. She kept pressing me, saying that I should have let her know if I had taken it, as she needed it. Eventually, she stopped messaging me, but the whole situation felt strange. It was clear to me that Sarah didn't really need the stroller. She just seemed frustrated that she wasn't getting what she wanted. Fast forward to today. I received a complimentary museum ticket from my work. However, I knew I wouldn't be able to use it before it expired, so I decided to post it in the Facebook group, offering it for free. Sarah, of course, was the first to comment. But then, a friend of mine texted me, saying she saw the post and was interested in the ticket. Since it was a small, inexpensive ticket, only worth about $15 to $20, I decided to give it to my friend, who I actually know and like, instead of Sarah. I deleted the post and sent the ticket to my friend. Soon after, Sarah messaged me, furious that I didn't give her the ticket. She reminded me that she was the first to comment, and that it wasn't fair that I gave it to someone else. I explained that I gave it to my friend because she wanted it, and because I personally know her. I felt that, since it wasn't much money, I could at least give it to someone I had a personal connection with. But Sarah didn't take it well. She went off on me, calling me inconsiderate, and then blocked me. I was taken aback because, honestly, I've never even met her in person. Now, my husband says I'm the asshole for not giving the ticket to Sarah, especially since she was first to comment and because I've never given her anything before. He thinks I should have honored the first to comment rule. But I disagree. We live in a neighborhood where generosity is common, and I don't want to just give things away to anyone who happens to comment first. I've never seen Sarah post that she needs anything specific, but she often seems to try to grab anything that's free. I'd rather give my things to people I actually know and feel comfortable with. To me, it's about the connection, not just about following an unspoken rule. I just don't think Sarah is entitled to everything she asks for. So, am I the asshole for giving my things away to other people instead of honoring the first to comment unspoken rule? Am I the asshole for taking a stray cat to a rescue? So, here's the situation. I've lived in this house for 2 years now, and there are a ton of stray cats around, most of them feral. Over time, I've been taking in kittens when I find them and bringing them to a local rescue, and it's always been smooth sailing. No issues. However, there's one tomcat who's been around for a long time. I know him well, and I've been feeding him along with all the other strays. He's always been a bit more social compared to the other cats, but it's clear he's been neglected. The first things I noticed about him were how matted his fur was and how underweight he seemed for his size. He also had fleas and looked generally in poor condition. He blended in with the other ferals, but he was just a little friendlier. I saw him outside every day at all hours. Eventually, he started following me around and allowed me to pick him up. I started feeling conflicted about what to do. He was clearly in need of help, but I didn't think I was in the right position to take him in. I did, however, contact the rescue group I work with, and they said they had space for him. I figured that would be the best option, so I took him there about 2 weeks ago. The next day, they sent me the vet report. Turns out he was severely underweight, dehydrated, had FIV, fleas, heartworms, and rotting teeth that needed to be pulled. The vet said he'd need to be sedated and shaved down completely to get all the mats out of his fur. The prognosis wasn't great. Basically, they're just managing his symptoms and hoping he doesn't die soon. But the good news is, he's now in a foster home where he's comfortable. Fast forward to yesterday. My neighbors came over and asked me about the cat. Apparently, they'd seen him near my house and wanted to know where he was. I told them that I had taken him to the rescue. They insisted that the cat was theirs and had been with them forever. I told them that there was no microchip or identification, and based on his condition, it didn't look like he'd been well cared for. I tried to phrase it gently, but the truth was obvious. They asked me where he was, and I honestly didn't know exactly where the foster home was. The conversation quickly escalated, and they became quite aggressive. They even threatened to call the police. I just said, okay, not really thinking the cops would show up, given the nature of my neighborhood. No police ever came, which wasn't surprising, but now I'm feeling a little guilty. In my opinion, my neighbors weren't taking proper care of the cat. I know they said he's hard to get inside, but that wasn't my experience with him. He followed me around every day, and I could pick him up easily. The way I see it, they neglected him, and it breaks my heart to see animals treated that way. But they're insisting he's always been their cat. So, am I the asshole here? Should I have just left him where he was, even though he was in such bad condition? Am I the asshole for ruining my future wife's cousin's reputation in the family? First, let me clarify. I don't think I ruined anything. I think E is just being dramatic. So, a little over 2 years ago, I, 34M, was feeling pretty tired of dating. I asked my parents to arrange some dates with prospective women, basically an arranged marriage situation. That's when I met E. E was very kind, funny, and smart, and after just 2 dates, I thought she could be the woman of my dreams. But, as we sat down to discuss what we both wanted in a marriage, it became clear that we weren't compatible. The main issue was that I wanted to continue living with my parents. I'm an only child, and she didn't. We had a very cordial breakup after a few honest discussions. Just to clarify for those wondering, my plan isn't to live in the same house as my parents forever. We plan to build separate houses on the same plot of land so that I can take care of them in the future while still maintaining some privacy. My parents are still young and healthy, so this is something I'm planning for down the line. Fast forward 3 months, and I met my current fiancé, M. We were very compatible and got engaged quickly. We fell in love during our year-long engagement and finally set the wedding date last month. We had a party to celebrate, and that's when I learned that E is actually M's distant cousin. E's uncle is married to M's father's cousin. I thought it was a funny coincidence, but it didn't bother me at all. What I didn't know, though, was that before I even knew they were related, I had told M about why my relationship with E didn't work out. I explained that the main reason was that I wanted to live with my parents, and E wasn't comfortable with that. M later shared this information with her family, her mother, sister, and a few close cousins. It turns out that when it became clear who E was in relation to M, her family started shaming her. Not for not wanting to live with her in-laws, but because E had caused issues between her brother and sister-in-law, SIL. Apparently, E's SIL didn't want to live with E's parents, and E had made problems out of that, which led to some tension in the family. I had no idea about any of this until I received a scathing voicemail from E. She was furious and screamed at me for gossiping about her and ruining her reputation within the family. She told me I was an asshole for painting her in a bad light after we had already parted ways. So here I am, wondering, am I the asshole for sharing the reasons my relationship with E ended and inadvertently making her the target of her family's judgment? I don't think I've done anything wrong, but he seems to believe I've completely ruined her reputation. Am I the asshole for asking my husband to stop funding his side of the family? I need to know if I'm the asshole. This situation is a bit complicated, and I apologize for the long post, but I'd really appreciate your thoughts. My husband, 30M, and I, 30F, have been married since 2021, and we've been together since 2019. He's a sweet guy and always ready to help, but we're having a disagreement that's been weighing on me. He's the middle child of 2 brothers, 32 and 25, and here's where the issue lies. My husband and I have worked really hard to get to where we are today. We're comfortable, but we've been mindful of our spending. Earlier this year, his father passed away, and we paid for the funeral services without asking for or expecting anything in return. I feel like I've been supportive and understanding, but the problem has been his 2 brothers. His older brother works part-time but has an unreliable and inconsistent schedule. He's paid cash under the table, and sometimes he doesn't work for weeks. When he does work, it's only for a few days at a time. His younger brother has been clean from drug addiction for about 6 months, but he got into a bad car wreck about a year ago, and he constantly uses that as an excuse for not working or trying to improve his situation. Both brothers are living with my mother-in-law, who is on a fixed income of about $1,200 to $1,300 a month. She struggles to make ends meet, even with both sons living in her home. There's often no food in the house and no propane to heat it. They all have poor spending habits. Alcohol, tobacco, lotto tickets, and marijuana are regularly bought, but budgeting is never a priority. My husband, on the other hand, has completely changed his spending habits and learned budgeting since we've been together. So it's frustrating for me to see his family's financial irresponsibility. The problem is that over the last few months, my husband has been sending money to his family to help. When we visited for Thanksgiving, we had a serious talk about his financial support for them. I told him that I couldn't see myself having children with him while he continues to financially support his family like this, especially when we should be focusing on building our own future. The conversation got heated, and I felt bad because I know they're struggling, and I don't want to be the reason they go hungry or are having a tough time. But here's the issue. I looked at our bank statements, and in total, his family has received over $5,000 from us this year alone. This doesn't include the funeral costs, groceries, bills, or cash we've handed over in person. I don't mind helping his mom when she needs it, but she refuses to put her foot down when it comes to his two brothers. They keep asking for more money, and it feels like they're just mooching off of us. They're able-bodied men who can work but simply refuse to do so. I asked my husband to stop funding his brothers and instead focus on supporting our future family. I told him I'm not comfortable having children while he continues to prioritize them over us. This request caused some tension, and now I'm feeling conflicted. Am I the asshole for asking him to cut off the monetary support to his side of the family in order to prioritize our own future? Am I the asshole for throwing away a stupid scarf? So here's the situation. My mother-in-law, Mael, stayed with us over the weekend, and the entire time, she made horrible comments about me, my family, and especially our 18-year-old daughter, who is a senior in high school. It all started on Saturday. My daughter had to work a double shift at her restaurant job, and when she came home, she was so tired that she fell asleep on the couch while watching TV. Mael was staying in the guest room, and since my daughter was sleeping on the couch, Mael decided it was a good opportunity to snoop through my daughter's room while we were all asleep. What Mael found was a box of condoms in my daughter's sock drawer. The box had been given to her by my husband and me when she started dating her boyfriend, and the box was unopened. We gave it to her because, at the end of the day, teenagers are going to make their own decisions, and we want her to be safe. We're not religious, but our daughter is. She's been going to church with her friends since 7th grade and has a great sense of community there. She's also a virgin and wants to wait until marriage or until she feels like she's with someone long-term. She's only been dating her boyfriend for 6 months. And again, the box was unopened. So, back to the incident. Mael found the condoms and started screaming at my daughter, waking her up at 1 a.m. She called her every name in the book. My husband and I didn't even know this was happening because our room is on a different floor. We only found out after Mael went home, when our daughter told us about the whole thing. On Sunday, my daughter and her boyfriend were going to the movies. She wore a dress that was slightly above her knees with leggings underneath because it was cold. Mael, being the wonderful person she is, tugged on my daughter's skirt and said, "Put on something proper. It's inappropriate going to the movies dressed like a little whore, dear." At that point, my husband told Mael it was time for her to leave. She packed up all of her stuff and left, and I was fuming. Later that night, I went into the guest room to tidy up, and I saw that Mael had left behind a scarf. I was so pissed about the way she had treated my daughter that I threw it away. The next day, Mael called my husband asking about the scarf, and he told her he hadn't seen it. I overheard him on the phone and casually mentioned, "Yeah, I threw that stupid scarf away." Now my husband is beyond pissed at me because apparently, the scarf was a gift from his late aunt. But honestly, I feel like what Mael did to my daughter was so much worse than throwing away a scarf. So, am I the asshole for throwing away the scarf? Am I the asshole for not attending my best friend's wedding? I, 25F, have been best friends with Louise, 25F, for almost 20 years. We've had our ups and downs over the years, like when we went to different universities, but we've always remained close. Louise has always dreamed of a Christmas wedding. One with snow, pictures by the Christmas tree, all the classic romantic stuff. When she got engaged last Christmas, she immediately started planning her dream wedding and asked me to be a bridesmaid, which I was beyond excited about. The problem started when she announced that the wedding was set for Christmas Day. Yes, December 25th. I was shocked. I knew she loved Christmas, but I didn't think she would actually set the date for the holiday itself. To be honest, I didn't even know it was possible to get married on Christmas Day. I immediately expressed my concern, not just for myself, but for other guests as well. Christmas is such a family-focused day, and it seemed like an odd choice for a wedding. Since she's my best friend, I wanted to support her. But then I realized that this would be my daughter's first Christmas, and I simply couldn't miss that. As any parent will understand, a baby's first Christmas is a really big deal, and I wanted to make special memories with my family. The wedding is also in Edinburgh. We live in London, so I wouldn't even be able to attend part of the wedding and then rush home to do Christmas traditions with my family. Louise had chosen Edinburgh because she thought it was more magical and romantic, but it makes things even harder logistically. After giving it a lot of thought, I told Louise that I wouldn't be able to attend the wedding but would love to celebrate with her in some other way. She was furious. She said I was being selfish and that Christmas would be her one special day to get married. She also pointed out that I'd have every other Christmas with my daughter, but this would be her only wedding day. The situation got more complicated when other guests began to RSVP saying they wouldn't be able to attend either, and Louise got even angrier. I feel guilty because I want to be there for her, but at the same time, I can't justify missing my daughter's first Christmas. So, am I the asshole? Am I really being as selfish as Louise says I am? I feel torn, but I just can't imagine missing my daughter's first Christmas for a wedding. Am I the asshole for beating my girlfriend's brother at a game when I would normally let him win, to prove a point? So, a little background. I, 28M, have been dating my girlfriend, 26F, for about a year now, and when I visit her house, I often play games with her little brother, 12M. We mostly play competitive video games like Call of Duty, and whenever we played, I would usually let him win just to be a good sport and keep things fun. A few days ago, I was visiting again, and her little brother had two of his friends over. While I was in the other room, I overheard them talking about me. My girlfriend's brother was saying some pretty nasty things about me, including calling me terrible at games and making fun of me, saying it was embarrassing how bad I was and that I must be mentally disabled to play that poorly. He used much more offensive language than that. He also said my girlfriend must be stupid to be dating someone like me, and his friends were laughing. I've always tried to be friendly with him, so this really stung. I decided I would confront the situation, but not in a way where I just let him have his way again. A bit later, I asked him if he wanted to play some games. He acted polite, but I could tell his friends were still laughing under their breath. So, when we played Call of Duty again, I didn't hold back and played seriously. I didn't go out of my way to be cruel, but I definitely wasn't going easy on him like I normally would. After a few rounds, he was visibly upset, and his friends were laughing at him. He ended up storming off to his room in tears. My girlfriend found out what happened and was really upset with me. Later, in the car, she told me that I had deliberately made her brother cry, and that I should have just let it go, since he's just a kid. I explained that I wasn't trying to make him cry. I just didn't like how he'd been talking about me and my girlfriend. I wanted to show him that there are consequences for saying hurtful things, and I didn't think I should keep letting him win just to avoid confrontation. Now I'm feeling guilty, and I'm wondering if I took things too far. My girlfriend thinks I should have just ignored it and not made her brother upset. So, AITA for beating him at the game to prove a point, or should I have handled it differently? Am I the asshole for getting my 15-year-old son a phone when my wife told me multiple times not to? I, 54M, have 3 grown children and 1 teenager. Kyle, 15M. With my 3 older kids out of the house now, 26F, 20M, and 18F, Kyle has been feeling lonelier than ever. He has lots of friends at school, but he really enjoys spending time with his siblings, especially his 20-year-old brother. Unfortunately, Kyle didn't have a phone, and he's been expressing how much he hates being the only one in his friend group without one. He's mentioned that it's hard to stay in touch with his older siblings and friends without a phone, and he feels like he's missing out on a lot of things. Now, in the past, all my kids had phones by the time they were 13, mainly because they had after-school activities and needed a way to stay in touch. But my wife has been very adamant that Kyle should not get a phone at this age. We've discussed it several times over the past year, especially when Kyle started high school, but each time my wife shut it down, saying she didn't want him to have one. She also got visibly upset when I tried to bring it up again, telling me that her only baby shouldn't have a phone at such a young age. Despite my reasoning that this is normal and Kyle would benefit from it, she was firm in her stance. One thing my wife and I generally agree on is that decisions like this should be mutual. So, out of respect for her wishes, I didn't push the issue. But I can't help but feel that she's being unreasonable. She never really provided a clear or convincing reason as to why Kyle shouldn't have a phone. As time went on, Kyle got more upset. He's in 10th grade now, and he feels more left out than ever. It's hard for him to get in touch with us when he needs a ride or has to make plans. He also feels frustrated that he's the only one in his group without a phone. A month ago, after hearing his frustrations for so long, Kyle begged me to just get him a phone. I told him I couldn't go behind his mother's back, but he insisted that she was being unfair and that he needed the phone to be more connected with the family and his friends. I finally agreed to get him a phone, but only on the condition that he didn't tell his mother, and that he kept it a secret. He was overjoyed, and I felt like it was the right thing to do, given how upset Kyle was. The phone made it much easier for me to contact him when I dropped him off and picked him up from school. He seemed a lot happier, and I thought everything was working out fine. However, things took a turn this past weekend. My wife found out about the phone, and she absolutely lost it. She was furious, screaming at me for betraying her and telling me that I was irresponsible. She accused me of allowing our son to do bad things on his phone, although she didn't specify what exactly she meant by that. I tried to explain that I thought I was doing what was best for Kyle, and that I hadn't received any solid reasons from her as to why he shouldn't have one. But my wife was beyond angry and said I'd broken our agreement. She even tried to confiscate the phone, but I told her I had bought it and that, as the person who paid for it, I had the final say. She was furious at that response. She kept telling me that she had warned me many times not to get Kyle a phone and that I had betrayed her trust. She accused me of going behind her back, and despite my attempts to apologize and explain my side, she refused to listen. She's still furious, calling me a snake and saying that I violated our mutual decision-making process. She's refusing to speak to me about it, and the tension between us is unbearable. To make matters worse, this whole situation isn't just about the phone. My wife has also been very controlling over Kyle's other devices. She took away his school-issued Chromebook every day after school and only allowed him to use it for homework. She also gave him an iPad for Christmas last year, but she never let him use it. She's very strict about what technology Kyle is allowed to access, and it feels like she's being overly restrictive. I trust Kyle, and we've already set clear rules around phone usage. So far, he's been responsible with it, and he's been following the rules I set for him. I spoke with my wife after the incident, apologized for going behind her back, and told her that I had to do it because every time I tried to talk to her about getting Kyle a phone, she would cry and scream. She'd shut me down immediately, and I didn't know what else to do. Unfortunately, she didn't accept my apology. She just accused me of being deceitful and manipulative, calling me a snake for going behind her back. So now I'm left wondering if I made the right decision. Was I wrong to get my son a phone when my wife clearly didn't want him to have one? Did I betray her trust by doing something I felt was in Kyle's best interest? Am I the asshole here? Edit. I wanted to clarify something. It's not just about the phone. My wife has a pattern of taking away Kyle's access to other devices like the Chromebook, which is needed for his schoolwork, and the iPad, which he never got to use. It's been a recurring issue with her controlling his access to technology. Kyle is a good kid, and I trust him to use the phone responsibly. I've also apologized to my wife for going behind her back, but she refuses to listen to my side of things. She still hasn't accepted my apology, and things feel really strained right now. Am I the asshole for refusing to cook a 3-course vegan meal for my parents, even though I'm hosting? I, 26F, have always been passionate about cooking, but my relationship with food and my parents has been complicated. My parents, 6062, are terrible cooks. They learned at some point that everything needs to be boiled for 20 minutes. This resulted in a childhood full of mushy vegetables, overcooked pasta, rice that was more porridge than grains, and many soups that consisted of just noodles and broth. Most of the meals were either fried or bland, and to this day, my parents still don't know much about cooking. I started cooking my own food at 14, mostly out of necessity, but also because I began enjoying it. At 16, after the family pet passed away, I decided to go vegan, but my parents didn't let me. They forced me to cook meat and fish dishes for them until I turned 18. Once I had the freedom to cook for myself, I dove deeper into veganism and started experimenting more with flavors, spices, and different cuisines. Over time, I've developed a solid cooking skill set, but my parents have always been critical of my food choices. They call my meals weird, exotic, or too much, because I don't stick to traditional meals and love to experiment with spices. I wouldn't say I'm a professional chef, but I'm a far cry from the overcooked, bland meals they served when I was younger. Now, I'm living in the UK with my boyfriend. My parents and brother are visiting for the holidays, and while they'll be staying at a hotel, we're planning to have meals together at my place and some at restaurants. When my mom called recently to ask what I'll be preparing, I was a little surprised when she said she was excited to try the food. She mentioned that she wanted to experiment more and hoped to bring my dad out of his comfort zone. This sounded promising, especially since I've tried on multiple occasions to get them to try my meals, sometimes as birthday requests, sometimes just to share my experiments. Every time, though, they end up criticizing my cooking. They've called my food too healthy, even though I don't eat healthy all the time. They've complained about the spices, about the ingredients, and when we've gone to vegan restaurants, which is rare, they've sulked and barely touched their meals. Food waste has also been a huge issue for me. Seeing my meals go to waste when they don't even try them is honestly distressing. To add to this, my mom constantly asks me to cook for her when I visit home. Sometimes I'm happy to, but it feels weird, and she gets mad if I refuse. I'm just tired of this dynamic, and it's been hard to shake the feeling that they resent me for not being grateful for the meals they used to make me. Now, with the holidays coming up, my mom is asking me to prepare a 3-course vegan meal for the family, appetizers, main course, and dessert. This just feels like a lot to me. I'm not sure if I'm being too sensitive, but I really don't want to spend Christmas listening to my dad and brother complain about the food, my mom making passive-aggressive comments about how weird the food is, and then seeing everything go to waste. The pressure to prepare a special meal, especially when I know it won't be appreciated, makes me feel overwhelmed. The holidays already bring a lot of spending, and I don't want to feel bad about wasting food on top of it. Honestly, I'd rather tell them to just buy their usual pre-made Christmas meals, the ones they're comfortable with. I want to avoid the stress and disappointment, and it feels like the easiest option. My boyfriend, on the other hand, thinks I should just cook the meal since we are hosting and had already chosen some recipes we were excited to cook together. He wants to make the holiday special, and I do too, but I just don't want it to turn into a situation where I'm spending all this time and energy making food that won't be appreciated. So, am I the asshole for refusing to cook a 3-course vegan meal for my parents, even though I'm hosting and they're excited about it? Should I just go ahead and cook? Or is it okay to set some boundaries and not cater to their preferences this time? Edit asterisk to clarify, I'm happy to cook and share meals with my parents when they show an interest in trying new things, or when they are open-minded about food. But based on past experiences, I just feel like this is a repeat of the same frustrating pattern, and I'm concerned it will lead to more criticism and food waste. I want to have a peaceful holiday, not one filled with passive-aggressive remarks and wasted food. Am I the asshole for refusing to send screenshots of a conversation I had with my friend's ex to her? I, 25F, have had a rocky and complicated friendship with 2 people, Allison, 26F, and Jack, 26M. I met them both in high school and we used to be pretty close. At one point, I even lived with them briefly, but over time we drifted apart due to a lot of drama. In recent years, our friendship has been on and off, mostly because of the complex dynamics between the three of us. Earlier this year, I had a falling out with Jack after he allegedly made defamatory comments about me. Allison warned me about what he had said, so I decided to cut ties with him. After Jack and Allison broke up, Allison started dating someone I was very close to, an ex of mine. This felt like a violation of a boundary I had set, and it ultimately led me to end my friendship with her too. However, as time passed, I reconsidered things. I ended up reaching out to Jack to apologize for how I ended our friendship. I admitted that I might have been unfair, especially since my issues with Allison at the time made me believe the accusations against Jack might not have been true. Jack accepted my apology but told me that while he appreciated it, he wasn't ready to rebuild our friendship because of the trauma the whole situation had caused him. Around the same time, Allison also reached out to apologize, and after some careful consideration, we cautiously reconnected. Fast forward to now, and Allison asked me to send her screenshots of my email exchange with Jack. She claimed she deserved to know if Jack had said anything about her in those emails. I explained to her that nothing significant was said, and that sharing those private emails felt invasive and unnecessary. I declined her request, but now she's upset and hasn't responded to me since. I'm wondering if I did the wrong thing by refusing to share private conversations with her, even though I had no issue reconciling with her or being open in general. Is it wrong to draw a boundary in this situation? Or should I have just shared the screenshots to avoid conflict? Am I the asshole for shouting and being rude at my mom after she called my brother dumb and useless? I, 25F, had a major argument with my mom, 46F, recently that I'm now unsure about. To give some context, I've been living on my own for 6 years, while my mom and younger brother, 9M, live together. My mom has been struggling emotionally for years. Her mom passed away 5 years ago, and then her partner, my brother's father, broke up with her 3 years ago. Since then, she hasn't worked, and I've been financially supporting her and my brother when I can, around 500–600 euro a month. I believe she's dealing with severe depression, but whenever I've offered to help by paying for therapy, she refuses, saying only crazy people go to therapy. We've had a lot of arguments around me trying to offer support or advice, but she usually just complains no matter what. I've even tried the "do you want to vent or do you want advice?" approach, but that doesn't work either. It's a constant cycle of frustration for both of us. Now, to the situation that led to our latest argument. My brother has been struggling with his exams lately, and my mom started voicing her frustrations aloud. She said, "It's not my fault he's dumb," with him right next to her. This wasn't the first time she said something like this, and it really hurt to hear. My brother clearly felt upset, so I reassured him that he is not dumb and offered to help him with his studies. I suggested that I could teach him and go over his lessons with him, but that my mom and dad needed to support him with the homework I'd be preparing. She agreed to this at the time. We've been working with this arrangement for a few months now. I've been helping my brother with his schoolwork, and he's gradually improved. He's now passing his exams, and I'm really proud of him. He's even started feeling more confident, and I'm so happy to see him so excited about his progress. However, every time we make progress, my mom still refuses to help him with his homework and continues to criticize him. This has really been a struggle. Yesterday, my brother was thrilled because he got his first 8 out of 10 on a math exam. We celebrated with a little dance and were so happy for him. But then, out of nowhere, my mom said, "What are you celebrating? Don't you see he's dumb? He can't even get a good grade with your help. He's useless." Hearing this, I completely lost my temper. I snapped at her, saying, "And who are you to say that? The worthless parent who can't even help her kid with his homework? He's doing really well, considering who his parents are. And an 8 is a good grade. You just refuse to be proud of him." After that, I took my brother out for a walk and to get something to eat to take his mind off things. When we got back, my mom was crying, saying I was rude and that she's trying her best. I feel bad because I know my mom is in a bad place emotionally, but I'm just so tired of her constantly putting my brother down. He's been working hard, and I've been doing my best to help him. She doesn't see that, and I just couldn't take it anymore. So, am I the asshole for shouting and being rude at my mom when she called my brother dumb and useless? I know she's struggling, but I just couldn't stay silent this time. Am I the asshole for calling the police about the deranged sounds coming from my neighbor's apartment? I'm a woman in my 50s and I live in a small building where my neighbor, John, a man in his 20s, and I have always had a fairly neutral, neighborly relationship. We text occasionally about building issues or sign for each other's packages. Nothing beyond that. We weren't friends, but we got along just fine. One afternoon over the summer, I was taking a nap when I was suddenly awakened by an incredibly disturbing sound. It was a high-pitched, keening wail that sounded like it could be either an animal or a human in extreme distress. It was so unsettling that it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I went out into the hall, and a few other neighbors were already gathered, equally confused and alarmed by the sound. We quickly determined that the noise was coming from John's apartment, but we couldn't figure out what was causing it. John didn't have a pet, which made the whole situation even stranger. The sounds continued for at least 90 minutes, and it sounded like either an injured or dying animal, or worse, a person in distress. I texted and called John multiple times, leaving messages about the sounds and expressing my concern, but I got no response. By this point, the other neighbors were also freaked out and suggested we should call the police to make sure no one, or no animal, was in danger in his apartment. I texted John one last time to let him know I was about to call 911. I didn't know what else to do. I called the police, explained the situation, and they could even hear the sounds in the background. Shortly after, John called me back, sounding very angry. He yelled, "You called the police? What were you thinking? I'll take care of it." About 20 minutes later, a man arrived at the building and opened the door to John's apartment. As soon as the door opened, the sound stopped, and an adorable bulldog came running out, wagging its tail. The man, who I assume was renting the apartment from John through some Airbnb-type arrangement, got on the phone and started arguing with John. I overheard him saying things like, "Well, you didn't say anything about pets." Apparently, John hadn't mentioned the dog, which is why we were all so confused by the distressing noises. I immediately called 911 back to let them know everything had been resolved, and the operator said everything was fine and no police would be coming. After that, I assumed everything was over, but then, about an hour later, John showed up at my door, furious. He was pounding on it, yelling about me calling the police. I explained again that it wasn't just me who was concerned. Several neighbors had gathered, and we were all worried about the strange sounds coming from his apartment. Since then, John has completely ignored me. He doesn't reply to any of my messages, and he doesn't even acknowledge me when I see him in the hall. It feels like he now views me as some kind of troublemaker, and I can't help but feel guilty. I'm also worried that he might think I acted insensitively as a white person calling the police on him, a black man, when that can have tragic consequences in this country. I am black as well, but at the time, my only concern was the strange, painful-sounding noise coming from his apartment. The situation scared me, and I felt that calling the police was the right thing to do. But now I'm wondering if I overreacted and whether I handled it in the wrong way. So, am I the asshole for calling the police about the disturbing sounds coming from my neighbor's apartment? Would I be the asshole if I left my disabled partner to handle introducing a new dog I don't want into our house? Background * my partner, 30, non-binary, they/he, and I, 32, male, have been together for almost 10 years. We have a child who is nearly 10 years old, and we also have a 4-year-old dog. My partner is disabled and struggles with working. They've had multiple breakdowns in the past after holding a stable job, and they're currently doing freelance work. They have a career goal that is costly and has likely been draining our finances. We bought a house thinking my partner would be able to work, but the house requires significant repairs, many of which are urgent, yet we haven't been able to do any of them due to financial constraints. We are behind on several bills, and it's been difficult to stay on top of everything. I have a steady, well-paying job that allows me to work from home. I'm worried this could change due to political instability, but there's no concrete information yet. So for now, my job remains stable. My partner and I also have a 4-year-old dog that they brought home as a puppy. This happened as a surprise after we had to give up the dog I loved. The situation with that dog was traumatic. The dog my partner brought home got into a fight with a neighbor's dog, which I tried to break up. Both dogs were injured in the process, and the neighbor who owned the other dog was also hurt. I still have flashbacks to that moment and haven't been able to move past it. Because of this, I've been adamant that I don't want another dog. However, despite me expressing this, my partner got this dog for me. Even though I never wanted another dog, especially one of this specific breed. This dog has health issues which require an expensive prescription diet. We've struggled to keep up with her medical needs due to the cost of vet care, and it feels like we've barely been able to provide her with the attention she needs. I have been doing most of the work to care for her, though I'm still concerned that she isn't getting the regular care I believe she needs, like proper grooming and nail trims. Both my partner and I have mental health struggles, and while my partner is getting therapy and medication, I haven't been able to justify the expense of seeking therapy for myself. Recently, my partner has been going through a lot, losing multiple things, having emotional breakdowns, and generally struggling. It's been a tough period for them, especially this time of year. The current situation *, here's the issue that led me to post. My partner is bringing home another dog today. From what I've gathered, it's a small breed, but I've been dissociating when they talk about it, so I don't have a lot of details. I've been very clear that I don't want this dog, and I've explained why in detail. I even tried to communicate my needs for how I would feel comfortable getting another dog. Unfortunately, every time I bring this up, my partner has had emotional breakdowns. Our friends and family members have also been vocal about how we should get another dog, saying it would be therapeutic. Even their counselor has suggested that bringing in this new dog would be helpful for my partner. I've come to the point where I feel that this dog is going to be brought into our home whether I like it or not. It's not about what I want anymore. It's about how much pushback I can handle from my partner's family and friends. They all seem to think it would be a good idea, and the emotional weight on my partner has been heavy. My dilemma *, I'm considering leaving for a few days to stay somewhere else, while my partner handles the introduction of the new dog. This would mean that my partner would be responsible for managing both dogs on their own. I know this is going to be physically difficult for them, given their disability and current emotional state. So, I'm wondering, would I be the asshole if I took this step? I want to be fair to my partner, but I also feel like I'm at my limit with the situation. I'm conflicted because I don't want to add to their struggles, but I also don't feel capable of dealing with this new dog. I'm scared that if I stay, it will only make things more difficult for both of us, especially with my own mental health. Expansion and additional details * after the traumatic experience with our previous dog, I've become more anxious about having another dog. I never fully processed the emotional toll it took on me, and I fear that introducing a new dog, especially when I'm already feeling overwhelmed, will trigger more flashbacks and further damage my mental health. It feels like my partner isn't acknowledging this, and I'm not sure if they truly understand how deeply this situation has affected me. The more I think about it, the more I feel like I'm being forced into a corner. It seems like everyone around us, my partner's family, our friends, even their therapist, is pushing me to accept this new dog. At times, it feels like no one is really considering my feelings or my emotional boundaries. It's hard enough dealing with the constant stress of bills, work, and taking care of our existing dog without throwing another animal into the mix. When my partner decided to bring home the dog we already have, I tried to be supportive. But now, with everything going on, I just can't wrap my head around bringing in another animal when our resources and energy are already stretched thin. I've had moments where I've tried to explain that I don't feel equipped to handle this situation, but I'm always met with resistance or guilt trips. It's becoming emotionally exhausting. I feel terrible about even thinking about leaving for a few days. I know my partner is struggling, and I don't want to abandon them. But at the same time, I feel like I need a break to regain some clarity and strength before I can face this new challenge. In the end, I'm torn between wanting to support my partner and protect my own well-being. I don't want to make their situation worse, but I also don't feel like I can give any more of myself without a break. Would it make me an asshole if I left? Would it be fair to my partner given their disability and current struggles? Would this just make everything worse? Or would it give both of us the space we need to breathe? Am I the asshole for needing a me day after vacationing at the in-laws for a week? I've recently been called an asshole for needing some time to myself, and I'm honestly questioning if I'm in the wrong. So, here's the situation. I went on a week-long vacation with my husband to visit his family. This is not a vacation for me by any stretch of the imagination. His family is, to put it bluntly, not my biggest fans. They come from old money, live in a fancy house, and have a way of looking down on people like me. People from humble beginnings. I know they don't think I'm good enough for their son. I get it, I accept it, and I don't let it bother me too much. But here's the thing. It's emotionally exhausting. I'm the type of person who tries to make the best of any situation. I want to support my husband, and I want to make sure that, at least when I'm around his family, I'm being positive, adaptable, and doing what I can to keep the peace. I bite my tongue when they make condescending comments about where I come from, and I put on a smile even though I'm dying inside. My husband's relationship with his family is really important to him, so I don't want to cause any issues by confronting them. But that doesn't mean I don't feel the strain of it all. Vacationing at his family's house feels like a long series of emotional punches. Every dinner, every conversation, every comment just takes something out of me. And by the end of the week, I'm absolutely drained. After we got back home, I asked my husband if I could have a me day. I wanted a day to myself to just recharge. No work, no responsibilities, no social obligations. Just me at home, doing whatever I wanted. I didn't think it was a big ask. Honestly, I thought I had earned it after the emotional labor of spending a week with his family. But my husband didn't see it that way. He got really upset and called me an asshole for wanting to take the day off. He said that I was being lazy and that there were so many things to do around the house, especially with the holidays coming up. He felt like I was just avoiding responsibilities, and that made me feel even worse. I tried to explain to him that I wasn't being lazy, I was just emotionally exhausted and needed to decompress. But it didn't seem to get through to him. He thinks I'm being selfish and that I should just power through like everyone else does. I get that we're getting closer to the holidays, and there's a lot to do, but I really don't think it's too much to ask for a single day to reset my mind and emotions. Am I the asshole for needing a break after spending a week with his family? Should I just suck it up and keep pushing through? Or is it fair to ask for this me day? Expanded version asterisk to give more context. I've been married to my husband for a few years now. When we first started dating, I was warned about his family. His parents, especially his mom, have a way of putting on this air of superiority. I get it. They grew up with a lot more privilege than I did. But the judgment is real. I've tried to be polite and cordial, but sometimes it feels like no matter how much I try, they just don't see me as good enough for their son. I've had to endure side comments about my upbringing, the way I dress, even my career. They just don't understand where I'm coming from, and honestly, it's not something I can explain to them. When I was younger, I had to fight for every opportunity, every break. I didn't have the luxury of a perfect family or an easy path. But when I married my husband, I knew that his family came with the territory. I've always tried to be the bigger person, keep the peace, and let him have his relationship with them without me stirring the pot. The week-long visit was supposed to be fun and relaxing, but I felt like I was walking on eggshells the entire time. It's always the same thing. His parents hosting extravagant dinners, making passive-aggressive comments about my upbringing, and just the constant pressure to be perfect. I know I shouldn't let it affect me, but it does. By the end of the week, I felt emotionally drained, like I was carrying around this heavy weight that I couldn't get rid of. When we finally got home, I just wanted a day to clear my head. A day where I didn't have to be on for anyone. A day where I didn't have to smile through things that were making me uncomfortable or pretend that everything was fine. Instead, I wanted to be alone in my own space, to process everything that had happened, and just focus on myself. But my husband didn't see it that way. He just couldn't understand why I needed the time alone, especially with so much to do. I've been trying to balance everything, keeping up with work, helping around the house, and now preparing for the holiday season. but I feel like I'm about to break. It's not like I'm asking for a whole week off or anything crazy. Just one day to get myself back together. Is that too much to ask? I know the holidays are stressful for everyone, and maybe I should have just powered through, but I really feel like I need this time. My husband's reaction has left me feeling like I'm in the wrong, and I'm just not sure anymore. Should I have just sucked it up? Or is it okay for me to need this me day after everything I've been dealing with? Am I the asshole for skipping Christmas after my parents' divorce? I, 30F, don't want to go home for Christmas this year. My parents got divorced this summer after a long series of cheating, separation, and dysfunction. My dad blames my mom entirely for the divorce, insisting his infidelity was just flirting and that she is the one who pushed him to do it, which is a blatant lie. For me, my breaking point wasn't just his cheating. It was the verbal abuse he directed at both my mother and me and my sisters over the years. After years of enduring his emotional manipulation and cruelty, I finally went semi-no contact with him. I didn't fully cut him off, though, because my mom asked me not to. I try to be civil at family events, keeping the peace because I don't want to make things worse for anyone else. But I never expected my dad to be involved in holiday celebrations after the divorce. Yet here he is, still planning to join us for Christmas, and it's making me dread the whole thing. To make matters worse, I recently had a fight with my mom, and she told me that while I'm loved, I'm not liked because I'm too difficult. My sister also jumped in during the argument, telling me that nobody in the family likes or loves me. She never apologized for saying this, and while we've since talked things through, it still really stings. There's this kernel of truth in what they said that I can't shake off. Maybe I am too difficult, but I feel like nobody really makes an effort to meet me halfway. I feel isolated and overlooked in my own family, and it's hard not to react to that. So now Christmas is coming up, and I'm torn. I love my grandfather. He's 97 and still doing well, and I feel obligated not to hurt my mom. But I also can't shake the feeling that if I go home, I'm just going to end up trapped in more emotional turmoil, surrounded by people who I feel don't really care about me. I don't want to spend the holiday dealing with my dad's presence, my mom's frustration, and the general negativity that has surrounded our family for so long. Is it wrong for me to want to skip Christmas this year? I know it would hurt my mom, but I feel like I need to take care of myself for once, especially with everything that's gone down this year. Am I the asshole for opting out of family Christmas? Should I just push through for my grandfather and my mom, or is it okay to prioritize my own mental health for a change? Am I the asshole for considering telling my best friend's mom about her boyfriend putting her in serious debt? I, 19F, have been best friends with Emma, 19F, since we were kids. Over the last 9 months, Emma has been in a relationship with her boyfriend, Tom, 18M, and when they first started dating, I honestly thought he was a great guy. Emma was so happy, and everything seemed perfect. However, things quickly took a turn for the worse. Tom cheated on Emma multiple times. She found evidence of his infidelity, including Grindr on his phone and texts where he was degrading her to his male friends. Despite this, she decided to give him another chance after he apologized and promised to change. I didn't agree with her decision, but I respected it and continued to support her as her best friend. Unfortunately, Tom's behavior got worse over time. He became more manipulative, and I've seen Emma change into someone I hardly recognize. She's become isolated and has distanced herself from her family and friends, and I've been trying my best to stay close to her, even though she's now in university about 5 hours away from me. Recently, I found out some shocking information. Tom has put Emma in thousands of pounds of debt. He convinced her to pay for his insurance after a motorbike accident, and when he couldn't afford his university accommodation rent, she paid that too. All of this has drained her financially. Emma comes from a poor background like I do, and now she has no money left at all. She's even in an overdraft and can't pay it back. She wants to drop out of university because her mental health is seriously suffering, but the university won't let her leave until she pays off the debt. The most upsetting part is that Tom is refusing to pay her back, and Emma has told no one about the extent of the situation, not even her mom. I've been feeling sick with worry for her because it's obvious she's being both financially and emotionally abused. I've had my own experience with a similar situation in the past, and I know how damaging it can be when no one intervenes. I'm seriously considering telling Emma's mom about everything, but I'm not sure if I'm overstepping. When I confided in another friend about what was going on, they said that I shouldn't get involved and that it's not my place to tell Emma's mother. They said it would be a dick move to interfere, but I'm honestly terrified that if no one does anything, Emma will end up stuck in this toxic relationship forever. I want to help, but I'm worried I might lose Emma if she feels like I've betrayed her trust. At the same time, I can't stand seeing her go through this. I've already seen how manipulative and controlling Tom is, and I fear he's going to take everything from her if someone doesn't step in. So, am I the asshole for considering telling her mom about the situation, or should I stay out of it and let Emma figure things out on her own? I just want to help her before it's too late. Am I the asshole for asking my friend to stop making me a third wheel in his relationship? So, here's the deal. My name's Eric, 25, and I met my friend Zane, 26, 2 years ago during an internship program. When we first met, I thought Zane was super attractive, and honestly, I was a little flirty with him. But once I found out he was straight and had a girlfriend, I respected that and stopped any flirtatious behavior. Over time, we became good friends, grabbing lunch together and working on projects, though we never hung out outside of work. After the program ended, we didn't keep in touch much. Then, a few months later, Zane reached out and told me his girlfriend had cheated on him and dumped him. He asked if I wanted to go bar hopping, and I was happy to hang out. We reconnected and started spending more time together, going out at least once a week. A few months later, Zane started dating a coworker, Gia. She seemed really nice, and I met her a few times. However, things took a turn one night when I was at Zane's apartment. He went to shower, and I was left alone with Gia. She started grilling me about Zane, how many girls he'd been with, if I thought they'd last, and if I'd ever had a crush on him. I was honest and told her that when we first met, I did find Zane attractive, but that feeling passed quickly, and I now saw him as a close friend. Gia didn't seem thrilled with my answer, but thankfully Zane came back, and we went out. A few weeks later, I hadn't seen Zane or Gia much, but Zane reached out saying he missed me and wanted to hang out. We made plans, but when I showed up, Gia was there too. We went to brunch, and it was fine. But then, I started noticing a pattern. Every time I made plans with Zane, Gia was tagging along. What used to be a bro night now felt like I was a third wheel. The activities Zane and I used to enjoy together, hitting bars, bowling, kayaking, or grabbing lunch, were replaced with things that Gia enjoyed, and I wasn't into. Now, most of our hangouts are at Zane's apartment, where we eat takeout and watch Zane and Gia play video games. I'm not a gamer, so I end up just sitting there on the couch, feeling like a spectator. To make matters worse, I'm driving 35 miles each way to hang out, and it feels like I'm losing my best friend. Zane and Gia work in healthcare too, so we only work 3 days a week, and Gia recently moved in with Zane, so they're together constantly. So, I've been thinking, would I be the asshole if I asked Zane if we could go back to hanging out one-on-one without Gia? I miss the times when it was just the two of us, and I feel like I'm losing that connection with my friend. I don't want to make things awkward or seem like I'm trying to exclude Gia, but I really miss spending time with Zane like we used to. What do you think? Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for refusing to let my parents see a picture of my boyfriend or talk about him anymore? I, 22F, recently started dating my boyfriend, 20M, and we're in a long-distance relationship. We've been dating for a couple of months, and we met in real life about 2 months ago. For the first time, I decided to tell my parents about my relationship because I'm really serious about him, but their reaction has been less than supportive. When I told them, they seemed kind of annoyed, and since then, whenever I've mentioned my boyfriend, they've made negative comments about him, despite never meeting him or knowing much about him. For example, when my father noticed I was wearing a ring that my boyfriend gave me, he asked if it was a real diamond. When I said no, he started saying that if my boyfriend really loved me, he would have bought a real diamond ring instead of a fake one, implying that he doesn't have money for a real one. Another time, I told my mom that I bought my boyfriend Christmas presents, and she started saying that my boyfriend was Muslim, he's not, and that he would force me to convert. I corrected her, saying that he's actually Buddhist just like her, but she kept insisting that I wouldn't be able to eat pork anymore because of him. My mom has also repeatedly asked about his skin color, which I find really strange considering we are Asian ourselves, and I've already told her that my boyfriend is also Asian. These comments have been hurtful, and I finally decided to bring it up to my mom. I told her that these comments bothered me and that I didn't want to talk about my boyfriend with her anymore if it was going to be like this. Instead of respecting my feelings, my mom accused me of loving my boyfriend more than I love her and my dad. She even said that boys will try to gain your trust so they can sell you off, which I found completely inappropriate and insulting. I tried to explain that the point wasn't about my boyfriend, but how her comments were upsetting me. She then claimed I was just upset because I told my boyfriend what she said, which wasn't true. I tried to tell her it was my feelings that were hurt, but she kept deflecting and focusing on my boyfriend's supposed reaction. In the end, I told her that I wouldn't share pictures of my boyfriend with her or talk about him anymore unless she could respect my wishes and stop making these hurtful comments. I told her that I needed her to respect my relationship and my boundaries. Now I'm wondering, am I the asshole for refusing to let my parents see a picture of my boyfriend or talk about him anymore? I just don't want to deal with this negativity anymore, and I feel like I've tried to communicate my feelings, but it's not being respected. My partner and I are getting married next year. We've already sent out the invitations, and the RSVPs have all been received. The wedding planning is well underway, and we've been looking forward to celebrating this next chapter in our lives. However, there's been some tension with my mother-in-law, Mael, and I'm unsure if I should bring up something she said regarding our wedding. To give you some context, my father-in-law, Phil, had a stroke in June, and he was in the hospital for about a month. Since he came home, we've been doing everything we can to ensure he gets the care and support he needs. We had to really push for adult social care and community nurses to get the necessary help in place because, in the UK, there's no additional medical insurance coverage for situations like this. It's been a lot of work, and my partner and I have been at the forefront of organizing everything. After Phil came home, Mil called my partner in July for some reason. We're not really sure what the purpose of the call was, as it didn't get very far. The issue is Mil wears hearing aids but takes them out frequently. During the call, she didn't have them in, and my partner raised his voice to make himself heard. Mil immediately snapped at him not to yell, and then she hung up. Since then, she hasn't made an effort to reach out, except to recently ask for our address to send a Christmas card. Now, I know that might seem like a small thing, but this isn't the first time Mil has acted like this. It's part of a larger pattern of behavior where she does or says something unpleasant, refuses to apologize or even acknowledge it, and expects everyone to just move on without addressing it. For example, earlier this year, during a football match, she made some racist and homophobic comments in our home. I immediately told her that we don't tolerate that kind of language in our house, and if she continued, she'd have to leave. The next day, she told my partner that I made her feel unwelcome, and that it wasn't like she was saying things in front of other people. It's hard to argue with someone who has such an inability to take responsibility for their actions. She's also said some pretty nasty things about people behind their backs, both about family and people she works with. I wouldn't be surprised if she talks about us the same way behind our backs, though of course I can't be sure. Here's where the real issue lies. My partner asked her why she hadn't been in touch with us for the last 5 months and to not send a Christmas card. Instead, he just wanted some kind of explanation. She responded with a snarky "find blame me for everything." And that was that. He's upset because he feels like there is no resolution, and now he's unsure whether she'll show up at the wedding and cause a scene, or if she won't show up at all. But it's not just about her ignoring us or causing tension between my partner and me. It's about something that happened back in May during our mini housewarming party. Emil was there with a few family friends, and they were all talking about how non-traditional we are. Like how we don't have kids, how we bought our house without even seeing it first, and our odd hobbies. It was just a casual conversation, and I wasn't expecting anything particularly mean to come out of it. But then Emil said, "Well, the wedding won't be traditional. I'll be the only mum there." It was a strange comment on its own, but there's more to it. My mum passed away 8 years ago, and that comment really stung. She said it with a smirk on her face, thinking I hadn't heard her, but I did. It felt like a deliberate jab, especially considering that she knew I had lost my mum. So now, I'm stuck wondering, Wibda, Would I be the asshole if I told my partner about this? I'm not sure if it would be more productive to tell him about her comment and add to the list of things that have been bothering me, or if it would just make things more complicated and potentially upset him more. I want him to know how I feel about her behavior, but at the same time, I'm worried about how this will affect the already fragile relationship between him and his mom, especially with our wedding coming up. I'm trying to be as understanding as I can, but my MIL's comments and actions are really starting to hurt, and I feel like I should stand up for myself and for my family. At this point, I'm just trying to decide if it's worth bringing it up, or if I should let it go and keep my peace. I don't want to cause more problems, but I also don't want to just sweep everything under the rug. What do you think? Would I be the asshole for telling my partner what his mom said? Here's the situation. My sister, 26, invited me, 24, on a trip to the Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam with her and 3 of her friends. All of her friends are nice, and I get along with them, though I don't see them often since we live in different cities. The trip would be about 3 weeks long, and I'm excited about the opportunity. I told my boyfriend, 26, about the trip as soon as I was invited, and he immediately got upset. He doesn't want me to go because he wants us to experience those places together for the first time. He claims that if I go without him, I'll enjoy it so much that I won't want to go back and see everything again with him. We've talked about going to places like Vietnam together, and he had plans for us to ride motorcycles there, but that's not what I'll be doing with my sister's group. Our trip will be much more laid back and not focused on the kind of adventures we talked about. He's also said that he waited for me to finish my university years and didn't go on any trips when he had the money and time. I told him that I would have been totally fine with him going on trips with his friends while I was in school. But here's the thing. During that time, he worked full-time and spent a lot of his money on things like a $15,000 truck instead of using it for travel. Now, he's doing university at his own pace, taking 1 year at a time and working in between. He could have completed it all at once, but chose not to. So, now he's asking me to wait for him to go on a trip together instead of going with my sister. But here's the thing. I've never been able to travel as much as my sister, mostly because I was broke or in school. She's always gone on these fun trips, and I've had to turn them down, so this opportunity feels like it's finally my turn. Plus, I've already been to places like Italy, which my boyfriend and I have talked about visiting together, but apparently it doesn't count. He says, it's not the same, or I don't really want to go there anyway, which feels dismissive of my past experiences. Also, my boyfriend and I have traveled together before and will continue to do so in the future. But he's insistent that I wait for him to go to these particular places, and honestly, I'm frustrated by it. The kicker? My boyfriend can't even come on the trip with me, even if I offered to pay for him, because he and my sister don't get along at all. They actually hate each other, which makes the whole dynamic even more complicated. So, to sum it up, my boyfriend wants me to wait and travel with him instead of going on this trip with my sister. He's upset and feels like I'm being unfair, but I feel like I deserve this trip. AITA for wanting to go on the trip with my sister and not wait for my boyfriend? Am I the asshole for making my younger siblings do things for me? I'm the oldest sister in my household, and I help take care of my 2 younger siblings who are 8 and 11. My older sister recently got married and moved out, so now I'm the one who handles a lot of the daily responsibilities. If my younger siblings are hungry, I usually make them food. If they want to play a game that I'm not particularly fond of, I play along just to spend time with them. I also help with things like getting them ready for school, making sure they finish their homework, or making sure they have everything they need for the day. I don't mind helping them, but in return, I do ask for small favors here and there. For example, if I'm in my room and I need something like the fan, I'll ask them to grab it for me. Or if I'm busy and need a glass of water, I'll ask them to bring me one. These are really simple requests, and I don't ask them to do anything huge or time-consuming. I try to keep things balanced, so I'm not always asking them to do things for me. But when I do, it's usually in exchange for the things I do for them, like cooking or playing games they enjoy. However, my mom seems to have an issue with this. She's always complaining when I ask my siblings to do these little things for me. She says I shouldn't be making them do tasks, even though it's never anything major and I always accept it if they say no. I just feel like, because I'm always helping them with so much, it's only fair that I ask for a few small things in return. But my mom thinks I'm taking advantage of them and that I should be doing everything myself, even if it's something as small as fetching a fan or getting a glass of water. I've noticed that when my older brother still lived with us, or even when my sister lived here, I would do much more for them, like taking on bigger responsibilities or helping with their chores. My mom never had an issue with that. She even encouraged me to help out more. But now, when I ask my younger siblings to do simple things, she acts like I'm asking for way too much. I don't know if I'm just being a typical sibling or if I'm actually crossing some line by asking them to do things for me. I try to make sure they don't feel burdened and that I'm not bossing them around. It's just hard for me to see the difference between what I do for them and what they do for me, especially when it comes to chores and taking care of each other. I feel like it's normal sibling behavior to ask for a favor now and then, but I'm unsure if I'm overstepping. So, am I the asshole for asking my younger siblings to do small things for me? Am I the asshole for making my younger siblings do things for me? I'm the oldest sister in my household, and I help take care of my two younger siblings who are 8 and 11. My older sister recently got married and moved out, so now I'm the one who handles a lot of the daily responsibilities. If my younger siblings are hungry, I usually make them food. If they want to play a game that I'm not particularly fond of, I play along just to spend time with them. I also help with things like getting them ready for school, making sure they finish their homework, or making sure they have everything they need for the day. I don't mind helping them, but in return, I do ask for small favors here and there. For example, if I'm in my room and I need something like the fan, I'll ask them to grab it for me. Or if I'm busy and need a glass of water, I'll ask them to bring me one. These are really simple requests, and I don't ask them to do anything huge or time-consuming. I try to keep things balanced, so I'm not always asking them to do things for me. But when I do, it's usually in exchange for the things I do for them, like cooking or playing games they enjoy. However, my mom seems to have an issue with this. She's always complaining when I ask my siblings to do these little things for me. She says I shouldn't be making them do tasks, even though it's never anything major and I always accept it if they say no. I just feel like, because I'm always helping them with so much, it's only fair that I ask for a few small things in return. But my mom thinks I'm taking advantage of them and that I should be doing everything myself, even if it's something as small as fetching a fan or getting a glass of water. I've noticed that when my older brother still lived with us, or even when my sister lived here, I would do much more for them, like taking on bigger responsibilities or helping with their chores. My mom never had an issue with that. She even encouraged me to help out more. But now, when I ask my younger siblings to do simple things, she acts like I'm asking for way too much. I don't know if I'm just being a typical sibling or if I'm actually crossing some line by asking them to do things for me. I try to make sure they don't feel burdened and that I'm not bossing them around. It's just hard for me to see the difference between what I do for them and what they do for me, especially when it comes to chores and taking care of each other. I feel like it's normal sibling behavior to ask for a favor now and then, but I'm unsure if I'm overstepping. So, am I the asshole for asking my younger siblings to do small things for me? Am I the asshole for going off on the bride and groom? Throwaway account. I, 31 male, have known my friend Drew for 10 years, ever since college. We've been close, and he recently got married to his longtime girlfriend, Amy. They've been together since high school, and they were each other's first and only partners. They got engaged a few years ago and planned a wedding abroad for Amy's family, as they're mostly from out of the country. However, this summer they decided to change their plans. Originally, Drew told me they were going to elope in the States, but then he called me to let me know they had changed their minds. They decided to have me as a groomsman instead of the original plan where they weren't going to have a best man or maid of honor. Then, they decided to make me the best man, even though they had originally talked about a camping trip as part of the wedding. Instead, they changed that to a group outing at a game night venue. They let everyone know that the wedding was in Washington, and the reception was in Wisconsin. They said that any attendee who came would be their wedding gift, meaning that showing up was the present. I didn't think much of it because, as the best man, I was expected to be there, so I went. We stayed at an Airbnb with the couple, their dog, and one of Amy's friends, Tara. We went to a vineyard together. I was wearing plaid, cargo shorts, and a basic t-shirt to help with the wedding. I hyped up Drew, helped with some wedding tasks, and even tried to help out with food when Tara offered to pay for groceries. I also did my part with the wedding stuff, including making sure the dog didn't run out of the house at one point, for which I apologized profusely to Drew. However, once I got home, Drew went off on me. He said I wasn't there for him enough during the wedding and that I was more interested in the traveling and fun than actually supporting him on his big day. He said I dressed inappropriately for the vineyard and never chipped in for expenses. I apologized again to both Drew and Amy, but then they dropped me as best man from their website, told me that I shouldn't have helped with any future weddings, since this was only the second wedding I'd ever been part of, and even asked Drew to review my best man speech before the wedding. I was the only person doing a speech for him, and it felt like they were second-guessing everything. Amy has made it clear that she completely hates me. We both agreed to not speak during the rest of the wedding, which was uncomfortable but fine. During the game night, they told me last minute that they were skipping dinner before the event. I had to drive to the city on my own and wait for hours before it started. I was also told not to stay at the hotel they had arranged since I was staying with family, which was odd, but I didn't push it. I didn't speak to Amy during this time as agreed, but I tried to get to know the other guests. When the event started, Amy started making passive-aggressive comments toward me, especially about my career. It was awkward, but I kept my distance and didn't react. At the reception, I gave my best man speech as planned. However, I got an incorrect meal from their menu, even though I had informed both of them multiple times about my dietary preferences. I tried to let it go, but the whole evening just felt off. After the reception, Drew and Amy called me and accused me of still not being there for them, not talking to Amy, and disrespected her by supposedly dragging her name, which I didn't do. When I asked what exactly I said or did wrong, they went silent and wouldn't clarify. At that point, I lost my temper and went off on them. I told them they had disrespected me, treated me like trash, and that I was done with how they were treating me. They called me an asshole and hung up on me. Am I the asshole for getting angry at my mother's physical affection? I, 26, female, really struggle with physical affection from my mom, things like hugs or kisses. I have two sisters, an older one and a younger one, and I'm the middle child. Growing up was tough for me. My older sister was a troubled teenager, and she bullied me a lot. It was difficult for my parents to manage her behavior, so I ended up spending a lot of time trying to understand their struggles and, unfortunately, internalizing a lot of pain. This led to years of depression and anxiety, which I've worked hard to heal from, but the scars are still there. Because my older sister required so much of my mom's attention, I was left to deal with my emotions mostly on my own. I felt invisible a lot of the time, and I never felt like I could express my needs. I was a quiet kid, and I didn't want to be a burden, so I just kept my feelings to myself. On the other hand, my dad was always there for me and gave me affection without any hesitation. I don't mind his affection at all. It feels comfortable and natural to me. But with my mom, it's different. I tend to pull away whenever she tries to show affection, whether it's a hug or even just a touch on my arm. I've tried explaining this to her in the past, telling her that not everyone shows love the same way. I've even told her that I do love her, but physical affection just doesn't feel right for me, especially after everything that happened when I was growing up. She always gets hurt when I say this and insists that I don't love her. She says things like, "If you loved me, you would show affection like your sisters do." This makes me feel guilty because, in my heart, I do love my mom. But the truth is, I can't help how I feel when she tries to physically show me affection. There have been rare moments when I've hugged her on my own, but it's not something I do often. It doesn't come naturally to me, and when I do, it's more out of a sense of obligation than genuine desire. I know it hurts her feelings when I pull away or get angry, and that guilt weighs heavily on me, but I don't know how to change these feelings. It's not that I don't care for her. It's just that my history with her, especially growing up, has left me with a complicated relationship with physical touch. I'm starting to wonder, though, if I'm in the wrong here. Should I just suck it up and try harder to meet her need for affection? Am I being unreasonable for feeling this way about my mom's physical affection, especially since she clearly wants it and it hurts her when I reject it? So, Am I the asshole for getting angry and distancing myself from my mom's physical affection? Am I the asshole for refusing to babysit my cousin and calling him a lying brat, even though it lets my aunt work extra and helps her family? I'm 15 years old, and my aunt Cassandra, who's 48, has a son named Tristan, who's 12. Tristan is honestly a nightmare to be around, and it's been affecting me more and more lately. My mom started asking me to babysit him so Aunt Cassandra could pick up extra work. The idea was that I'd watch Tristan while my aunt worked, which would help her family financially. But over time, I've realized that babysitting him is a lot more trouble than it's worth. Tristan has this pattern of lying to his mom about me, and unfortunately, she always believes him. He knows that if he complains enough, she'll buy him a gift to make it up to him. It's pretty manipulative, and I don't know how to get through to her. One example of this happened last Friday when I was babysitting him. I refused to give him his phone until he finished his homework, which Aunt Cassandra had specifically told me to do. Instead of doing his homework, Tristan threw a massive tantrum. He screamed, yelled, and made all kinds of accusations about me. The last time I babysat him, he claimed that I had friends over and destroyed the house, which was totally false. To protect myself, I decided to record everything on my phone, just in case he lied again. I showed the recording to Aunt Cassandra, hoping it would clear things up, but instead, she blamed me. She said that Tristan doesn't like being recorded, and that's why he acted out. She didn't care that he was lying again. It was incredibly frustrating. I've tried talking to my mom about how I don't want to babysit Tristan anymore because every time I do, I get punished for his lies. But she just brushes it off, saying that kids his age are like that and that I babysit other kids, so this should be no different. I was already fed up, but last Friday really pushed me over the edge. After showing my mom the video and explaining everything, she still took Aunt Cassandra's side. She said that my aunt really needs the extra income, and the money helps her family. She also insisted that I should be a dependable babysitter for the sake of family. We had a big argument because my mom asked me to babysit Tristan again this Friday. I told her no and said that I was done. I told her that Tristan is a lying little brat, and that maybe Aunt Cassandra should try babysitting him herself to understand how hard it is. I think I also mentioned that maybe the reason she can't keep a babysitter is because she refuses to discipline him. That's when my mom grounded me. Now I'm just feeling really frustrated. This whole situation has been going on since summer, and I'm at my breaking point. I've tried to be patient, but I'm done. I really don't want to keep babysitting Tristan anymore, especially since it's clear my aunt and mom don't care about the truth or how I feel. So, am I the asshole for finally refusing to babysit Tristan and for calling him a lying brat, even though Aunt Cassandra's extra money is helping her family? Am I the asshole for refusing to house sit for my friend after I found out they got a cat? I, 28M, agreed to house sit for my friend Alex, 30M, while they went on a week-long vacation. Alex has a dog, which I've always loved, and I thought it would be a nice thing to do to help them out. I even took some time off work to make sure I could give the dog plenty of attention during their absence. A few days before Alex left, I went over to pick up the house keys and get a rundown of what needed to be done while they were away. That's when Alex casually mentioned, "Oh, by the way, we got a cat." This immediately caught me off guard because I'm severely allergic to cats. Alex knows this. I've had to leave gatherings early before because of my allergies, and they've seen me react to cat dander. So, when Alex casually dropped the bomb, I asked why they hadn't mentioned it earlier. They said they'd only had the cat for about a month and forgot to mention it to me. At this point, I told Alex I couldn't house sit for them anymore. Even if I avoided the cat, just being in the house with the dander would trigger my allergies, and I didn't want to risk it. I suggested that they ask someone else to take care of the dog or hire a professional sitter, but Alex got defensive, saying that I was leaving them in a lurch right before their trip. I felt bad about that, but I didn't think it was fair for Alex to spring this on me at the last minute when they knew about my allergy. I offered to check in on the dog every day and help out in some way, but Alex said that wouldn't work since they needed someone to stay at the house full-time. They ended up scrambling to find someone else, and when they left for their trip, they were pretty angry with me. A mutual friend later told me that I should have just sucked it up for a week because Alex really needed the break, and they probably just forgot to mention the cat in the first place. I've been feeling a little guilty, like maybe I overreacted or should have just pushed through for a week to help out my friend. So, now I'm wondering, am I the asshole for refusing to house sit for Alex after I found out about the cat, even though they really needed the help? Or should I have just dealt with my allergies for the sake of their vacation? Am I the asshole for refusing to change my wedding date because my best friend is pregnant? I, 24F, got engaged to my fiancé, Luke, 27M, last year, and we've been planning our wedding for over a year now. Our wedding is set for early September, and everything is basically planned: venue, dress, catering, the works. My best friend, Sarah, 26F, is my maid of honor, and she's been really involved in the planning. I couldn't imagine my wedding day without her there. However, there's been a complication. Sarah recently found out she's pregnant and is due at the end of August. She told me about it last week and was really excited, but then she said, "So, I guess we need to figure out a new wedding date." I was really confused and asked what she meant. She explained that she likely wouldn't be able to attend the wedding because she'd either be in the hospital giving birth or recovering with a newborn. I understood that this was a huge life event for her, but I told her there was no way we could change the wedding date. We've already made significant payments, deposits, save the dates, and other non-refundable costs are all locked in. Sarah got really upset and said something like, "But I'm your best friend. How can you have your wedding without me there?" I tried to explain that it's not about not wanting her there. It's just that everything is set in stone, and changing the date would result in losing thousands of dollars and a lot of stress. She became even more upset, accusing me of valuing money over our friendship. She said, "If the roles were reversed, I'd move mountains to make sure you could be there for my big day." I tried to offer alternatives to make her feel included. I suggested that we could set up a live stream of the ceremony for her, or we could plan a special dinner after the baby is born to celebrate with her. But she shut that down, saying it wouldn't be the same as physically having her at the wedding. She also told me it was selfish of me not to understand that this was a once-in-a-lifetime moment for her too, becoming a mother for the first time and being part of my wedding day. To make matters more complicated, Sarah has started rallying some of our mutual friends, and now they all think I'm the villain. Some of them have said things like, "It's just a wedding, but a baby is forever," or "This is a sign you care more about the event than the people in your life." One friend even suggested I have a smaller, symbolic ceremony later in the year so Sarah could attend, but that idea feels ridiculous to me given how much we've already invested in the wedding and how much work has gone into planning it. Meanwhile, my mom and fiancé are both firmly on my side. My mom even said it was entitled of Sarah to expect me to rearrange everything for her, especially since she didn't consult me before deciding to have a baby, though, of course, she didn't need my permission. Luke thinks I should let Sarah cool off and focus on enjoying my wedding with the people who can be there. I feel really torn about the whole thing. I don't want to hurt Sarah, but I also feel like this is my wedding, and it's not fair to expect me to rearrange everything for something that was out of my control. I've tried to make compromises, but nothing seems to be good enough for her. So, am I being selfish for refusing to change the date of my wedding? Am I the asshole for snapping at my friend for touching my curly hair while it was drying and ruining it? I'm 23 years old, and I've had very curly hair my entire life. I'm white, but my hair is a 3C curl pattern, which is pretty tightly coiled. It's a part of me, and I take good care of it. Growing up, it was a source of insecurity because people constantly judged me for it, laughed at me, and honestly touched it without permission. It's something I've learned to love, but I also find it really triggering when people touch my hair without asking. I know a lot of curly-haired people will understand how delicate curls can be, how easily they can be ruined by one wrong move. Once it's messed up, it's really hard to fix. I put a lot of effort into making sure my hair looks good, and if someone ruins it, it takes a lot of work to restore it. So, this weekend, my friend, who's also 23, was over at my place. I had just showered and was letting my hair air dry. It was in that awkward in-between stage where it's not quite dry and not quite wet. For curly hair people, that stage can look weird, kind of flat and awkward, but I wait until it's fully dry to style it. While I was standing there, minding my business, my friend came up behind me and started scrunching my hair and running her fingers through it. My heart sank. I almost started crying. I immediately snapped at her and said something like, "What the hell? You just totally ruined my hair." I know I was rude, but honestly, I just couldn't help it. She didn't understand how much work it takes to get my hair to look the way I want it, and now I had to fix what she'd done. My friend didn't get why I was so upset. She told me I was being crazy and needed to chill out about my hair. She apologized, but was still frustrated that I'd gotten so mad. She said it wasn't a big deal, but to me it is a big deal. I explained how frustrating it is to spend hours on a wash day routine just to have someone mess it up with a single touch. She didn't get it. She just couldn't understand why. It made me so upset. I know I might sound obsessive or like I care too much about my hair, but it's not about being obsessed with having perfect hair. It's just that my hair is super curly and fine, and it doesn't take much to turn it into a frizzy mess. Having someone touch it without asking feels like a violation, especially when I know how hard I work to get it to look the way it does. So, am I the asshole for snapping at my friend, even though she didn't understand why it bothered me so much? Am I the asshole for telling my son's stepdad that he's not/never will be a father to him and starting a screaming fight? I, 31M, share split custody of my son, Marcus, 12M, with my ex, Lena, 30F. Lena and I broke up shortly after Marcus was born, but we've remained friendly, even though our communication has dropped off since she married Eric, 42M, 4 years ago. We've had our differences, mainly me not approving of some things they do and them thinking I spoil Marcus, but for the most part, we've kept it civil. I love my son deeply. He's a good kid. Smart, funny, caring, and having him in my life changed it for the better. Marcus is really my only family, so I treasure the time we have together. Recently, though, I've been concerned because Marcus has gained some weight, and while I wasn't planning to do anything drastic about it, I wanted to make sure we're eating healthy and staying active. He's still involved in sports, which I encourage. The problem arose when Lena and Eric decided to take a more aggressive approach. They put Marcus on a restricted diet and are pressuring him to lose weight, which I only recently learned about. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten until I got in trouble for buying Marcus a larger size in clothes, as Eric thought he should be trimming down to fit into his old clothes. I wasn't going to apologize for buying my son pants that fit. Then last week, when I went to pick Marcus up, I was sitting inside having coffee with Lena when I heard shouting from the other room. Apparently, Marcus had been hiding snacks in his room, and Eric found some candy bars in his overnight bag. Snacks that were no longer allowed in the house. Eric, upset, showed the candy bars to us as evidence, and then called Marcus names, telling him that he wouldn't be fat if he weren't so greedy. I lost it at that point. I stood up and told him to treat my son with respect. Eric's behavior was downright cruel, and I couldn't let it slide. Marcus, understandably, went to the car to get away from the situation. That's when things really escalated. In the heat of the moment, I told Eric that he would never be a father to Marcus, and I called him a bully. There were a lot of expletives thrown around, and things got loud. Afterward, Lena texted me, furious. I tried to apologize but was still in shock from everything that had happened. She told me that while Eric's actions were a bit much, Marcus had broken their rules and Eric was right that he needed to lose weight. She also said that I don't understand what it's like to deal with Marcus's disrespect, since I only experienced the fun parts of being a parent, and that I was encouraging bad behavior by letting Marcus get away with things. I had a talk with Marcus later and reassured him that I love him just the way he is, that he has nothing to be ashamed of. He seemed a bit better, but I'm still worried about taking him back to Lena's house. I know I probably made things worse by blowing up in the heat of the moment, and maybe I should have removed myself from the situation, but I just couldn't stand by while my son was treated that way. So, am I the asshole for snapping at Eric and telling him that he's not, and never will be, a father to Marcus, even though I know it led to a huge argument? Should I have handled things differently? Am I the asshole for telling my in-laws no to Christmas? I, 29F, have been married to my husband, 30M, for 6 years, and we've been together for 10. Christmas and holidays have never really been an issue for us, but things have changed since I got pregnant. I'm due between December 15th and December 21st. For the past few months, my in-laws have been pushing for us to do Christmas with them, and while my husband has been clear with them that we're happy to do Christmas, we'd prefer to do it in the second or third week of January after the baby is born. My reason is that I don't feel comfortable traveling with a newborn until they're at least a month old. At first, my in-laws seemed to understand and asked if the weekend of December 27th would work. We agreed that it would be fine, assuming that we could celebrate with them depending on when I went into labor. Now here's where things started to get weird. After finding out that my doctor plans to induce me on December 19th, or earlier if I go into labor naturally, I would be home by December 22nd if everything goes smoothly. My in-laws found out this info, and then they sent a group text with my sister-in-law and her husband, saying their one wish for Christmas this year is for all of us to come the weekend of December 27th to 29th and stay with them for the entire weekend. I literally couldn't believe it. I called my husband in shock and said, "Do they expect me to travel 2 hours with a 1-week-old and stay at their house for the whole weekend?" I just didn't feel like that was reasonable at all. Thankfully, my husband was totally on my side and said, "Do not worry." So, my husband started a new group chat with them and said the following: "Hi, since my name will be 1 week postpartum, she does not feel comfortable leaving the house when we won't even have a schedule or routine set up or any time to bond with our child. I have offered many weekends in late January that would work to celebrate and for us all to be together. But since you have kept pushing this, I don't think I'd feel comfortable having people at our house 1 week postpartum either. I am more than happy to discuss different dates that work for everyone, but we will not be participating in the holiday festivities that weekend. I would also like time to just be at home and not have to worry about showing face for photos and Facebook posts. I would just like to spend time with my wife and new baby." Let's just say that didn't go over well. They called my husband and said I was being selfish and that it shouldn't be an issue since I'll have plenty of help when they're all there. My husband, being the amazing partner he is, stood firm and said that my well-being and having time to bond with our baby are more important than them having their family Christmas on Christmas weekend. Now I'm feeling bad because I get that they're excited, but it just feels like they're not respecting my boundaries or the needs of a new mother. I understand that they want to celebrate the holidays together, but I don't think it's too much to ask to have the space to settle into our new life as a family and bond without being expected to travel or host at 1 week postpartum. So, AITA for refusing to go to my in-laws for Christmas, even though I know they're excited and feeling like they're not respecting my boundaries? Am I the asshole for bringing my daughter to my own child-free wedding? So, my husband, 29M, and I, 27F, just got married. We spent nearly a year planning the perfect wedding, making sure everything was just right. One of the first rules we decided on was a no kids policy. We wanted an adult environment where we didn't have to worry about children running around, getting into things, or crying. We made it very clear on the invitations that we didn't want anyone bringing children under 14. That being said, we did make an exception for our own daughter, who is 11 months old. We decided I would hold her during the reception and photos, and then a family friend would take her home and wait for the babysitter to arrive before coming back. We asked a few people if they would be willing to take care of her for the evening, and one of the people we asked was my husband's close friend Darren's wife, Jessica, fake names. She declined because she didn't want to drive, which was fine as we were able to make other arrangements. Now here's where things went south. On the day of the wedding, after we had explicitly told everyone several times about the no kids rule, Jessica showed up with her 4-year-old son. I was obviously taken aback, so I went up to her and asked about it. She told me, "Since you're bringing your kid, it's fine if I bring mine." Honestly, I was furious. I tried to stay calm and told her that this was still a child-free wedding, and that her son couldn't be running around. I told her she was welcome to leave him with someone and come back, but if she didn't, she'd have to leave. Jessica started yelling at me, saying that since I had a child, it wasn't fair that she couldn't have hers there. At this point, her son was already climbing on things, running around, and making a mess. I gave her one last warning. Either she would take her son and leave, or I would ask her to leave the venue. She rolled her eyes, sat down, and just let her son run wild. Eventually, her husband Darren managed to convince her to take the kid home, but the damage was done. The first part of my wedding was completely disrupted. Now, a few weeks later, I've been thinking about it and maybe I am in the wrong. I said no kids at my wedding, but I brought my own. A lot of people in my life have also mentioned that it was hypocritical of me to do so. So, AITA for bringing my daughter to my own child-free wedding? Am I the asshole for ruining our family dinner after a comment about my smile? We're currently on a family vacation with my husband, 2 kids, and my parents. A little background. My mother is a bit odd, and my dad has often said that she and I are like oil and water. It's hard to explain fully, but to sum it up, she seems very competitive for my father's attention, not just with me, but also with her grandsons. For example, if my dad wants to read them a story or tuck them into bed, she interrupts him and tells him it's time for him to go to sleep. It's incredibly awkward to watch. Another important detail is that I have chronic pain. I've exhausted all treatment options, and my once successful career is gone. My mother downplays my pain, acting as if it's just a small headache, even though she knows I'm always in some form of pain. In contrast, she's constantly looking for reasons to see a new doctor for every tiny twinge she feels. It's like a constant search for validation over her own health concerns. Now, to the issue. Tonight, we were about to go out for our first family dinner of the trip. We get to the lobby, everyone's dressed up, and the place is decorated for Christmas, so I'm taking pictures. I ask my dad to take a family picture of the 4 of us. As we're posing with the kids in front, I notice my mother standing right next to my dad, and then she yells, "Stop that! You need to fix your smile." At first, I think she's talking to one of the kids, so I add in, "Okay, nice smiles, everyone." But then my mom interrupts again and says, "No, your smile is horrible. It looks like," and she starts pulling at her own face, one side of her mouth up, one side down, while tilting her head to mimic me. I was honestly baffled because I was just smiling normally. I realized that my smile probably doesn't extend up to my eyes like it used to do to the pain, but I was still trying to smile. I try to reset myself, but she yells again, "Stop making that face." At that point, I'm really angry. I leave the pose, grab the phone from my dad, pick up my purse, and start walking toward the restaurant. But she follows me, continuing to criticize my smile, saying I need to look at the photos to see how awful it looked. I do look at them, and there was absolutely nothing wrong with the picture. There was no reason for her to keep going on about it. By this point, I'm done. I stop, tell my husband I'm sorry, but that I'm going to go back to the room. I tell him he and the kids can go to dinner without me. I was so angry that I started crying as soon as I was away from her. Now, my mom, and probably everyone else, thinks I ruined the dinner. And honestly, I probably did. But I feel like I shouldn't have to let her words slide anymore. I've already lost so much due to this chronic pain, and now she's criticizing something as basic as my smile, which I have no control over anymore. But I feel like I'm being unfair to my family, who I know wanted to have a good time, and that makes everything worse. So, am I the asshole for ruining dinner over a comment about my smile? Am I the asshole for telling my son that the fact that his sister was happier to see her cousin was his fault? I, 42, male, have a son named Jack, 22, and a daughter named Cassie, 7, from 2 different marriages. Jack's mother, Penelope, passed away when he was 9, and it was a huge loss for both of us. It took me a long time to feel ready to date again, which I did when Jack was 14. He was understandably upset about it. I met my current wife, Sarah, through work. We dated briefly, but when birth control failed and Sarah became pregnant, our relationship moved quickly. She moved in with Jack and me when she was 4 months pregnant, and we had to leave the apartment I shared with Penelope due to lack of space. This transition was tough on Jack, and he was put into therapy to help him adjust. Sarah, however, made an effort to respect Penelope's memory and kept memorabilia from my late wife, as Sarah had a bad experience with her own stepmother erasing her mother's memory. Despite this, Jack's relationship with Cassie, my daughter, didn't improve. When Cassie was born, Jack wanted nothing to do with her. While it was hurtful, I understood his feelings, especially after losing his mother. However, Cassie's maternal cousin, Will, 18, adored her from day one. Will took on the big brother role, frequently hanging out with her, playing with her dolls, and even having a matching Hello Kitty necklace with her that he uses as a good luck charm. This year, both Jack and Will went off to college. Jack didn't take high school seriously, had poor grades, and didn't get any scholarships. I could have paid for a private school, but I refused to pay $50,000 per year for him to not try, so he went to community college for 2 years and then transferred to a good school. Will, on the other hand, was an A student and a great athlete, earning an almost full scholarship to a faraway school. For Thanksgiving, both boys came home. Jack arrived first, and while Cassie greeted him with some enthusiasm, it was nothing compared to how she greeted Will. She had waited for Will at my sister-in-law's house, made a big glittery sign, and bawled when she saw him. My sister-in-law posted the video of the reunion on Facebook, and Jack saw it. He was really upset about the difference in the way Cassie welcomed him home. After listening to him complain about it repeatedly, I snapped and told him that this was the consequence of his actions. He had done nothing to build a bond with his sister for the past 7 years, and now he was seeing the result. Jack got really upset, stormed off to his room, and since then, my in-laws have been calling me, demanding that I reprimand Cassie for not greeting Jack with the same level of enthusiasm. Cassie doesn't know why Jack is upset, but she can tell something is wrong, and it's affecting her. Will is angry at Jack for making Cassie upset. I'm at a loss for what to do, and I'm wondering if I was wrong in how I handled it. So, am I the asshole for telling my son that his sister's reaction was his fault? Am I the asshole for not revealing the gender or names of my future child to family and friends? This situation has gotten so out of hand, it's almost unbelievable. I am 38 years old and 6 months pregnant with my first child. I don't have a terrible relationship with my in-laws, but it's not great either. They are incredibly active on social media, posting several times a day, like 4 or 5 posts daily. It drives me absolutely crazy. At first, I didn't tell anyone I was pregnant, not even my husband, until I passed the 12-week mark. I have a high-risk pregnancy, and I didn't want to get anyone's hopes up in case something went wrong. Thankfully, everything has been going smoothly since then. Over the Thanksgiving weekend, both sides of our family started asking for the baby's gender and wanting to talk about names. My mom knows that we're not ready to share any of that, and she's been very supportive. However, my siblings and my in-laws have been relentless. I've told them I don't know the gender and that I don't want to find out because it really doesn't matter to me either way. For names, we're keeping our choices private. We have a few picked out, but we might change our minds once the baby is born. I refuse to share our pics because I know they'll just post about it on social media. It's not that I don't trust their excitement. I just don't trust them to keep it to themselves. My husband is completely on the same page as me. Still, they keep accusing me of pushing them out of the process. Honestly, I just don't feel comfortable with how they act and how much they share online. Here's where I might have gone too far. After repeatedly asking them to stop, I finally got fed up. I'm no stranger to newborns. After all, I've worked with them for over 20 years, so I've calmly explained how I feel. But the questions kept coming. So in a moment of frustration, I jokingly said, "If you don't stop, I'll name the baby Rudolph." My mother-in-law responded, "Why can't you ever do anything normal? This is supposed to be the fun part, and you're ruining it for all of us." I could tell I hurt her feelings, but everything I do ends up plastered all over social media, and that's not something I want for my child. My husband immediately stepped in and told his family to back off. He told them that if they wanted to be involved, they needed to show actual effort rather than just badgering me and offering unwanted advice. That's when things really blew up. Decades-old issues came up, and we ended up leaving the gathering. And, of course, his sister posted about it on Instagram, proving my point. Now, we've turned off our phones because I keep getting called the bitch who made mom cry. So, am I the asshole here? Am I the asshole for not wanting to attend my husband's Christmas party because he invited my ex-friend? I 30F had a close friendship with a coworker, Kathy, who I considered one of my best friends for a long time. We spoke almost every day, and I even helped her out financially when her dad was in the hospital by secretly raising $1,600 through a GoFundMe to help with her travel expenses. Unfortunately, she never used the money for its intended purpose, and instead of traveling to see her dad, she kept coming up with excuses, which left some people, including me, feeling like they had been misled. Our friendship became even more complicated when Kathy applied for a job at my husband's workplace. She ended up working there, and the situation got tense because Kathy had issues with my husband's boss. She tried to expose the team for shady practices and developed a reputation for being difficult. My husband stood his ground with her, and on several occasions, I caught Kathy in lies about him, which made me feel torn between defending my husband and maintaining my friendship with her. Eventually, Kathy started distancing herself from me. She met a new group of friends and our communication became less frequent. She didn't show up for my child's birthday or reach out when I tried to arrange a get-together. It hurt, but I understood. It seemed like she found people she clicked with more easily. Over time, she also ghosted a mutual friend who was struggling with depression. That friend eventually sought therapy and moved on with their life, while Kathy missed out on the opportunity to repair that friendship. Fast forward to now. My husband is hosting a Christmas party for his coworkers, and Kathy and her husband have both RSVP'd. The problem is that this is a small event in a small space, and I'm really uncomfortable with the idea of spending the evening around her. The unresolved anger I still feel about how she treated me and the lies she told really makes it hard for me to be in the same room as her. I've expressed this to my husband, and he feels it's unfair that he should have to host the event without me there. He says I should just go and have a good time and that I'm making it awkward for him. Here's the thing. I truly don't feel like his coworkers will judge him for my absence, and I'm just not sure I can go without running into her at some point. I've asked him to understand my feelings, but he thinks I'm being unfair to him by making him choose between me and his work obligations. So, whipta if I decided not to go. ITA for telling my accidental roommate she can't have sex in my bathroom? So here's the situation. Sam, 18F, called me about 7 weeks ago to tell me that she was dropping out of school because the cost of living on campus was too high, and she didn't have a car to commute. We agreed she could move in with me at the end of the semester. I made it clear beforehand that I don't charge friends rent but asked if she could contribute to utilities. A few days later, she came over and I never really asked her to leave. I had made 2 main boundaries clear before she moved in. No sex in shared spaces or on furniture. Ask before bringing anyone over. After she moved in, she started calling it our apartment, but immediately began breaking the boundaries. She refused to help with chores like loading the dishwasher, saying she just didn't like doing dishes. After a few weeks, I found out that she had been having sex in the bathroom. I texted her to remind her of the boundary. She agreed and said she'd stop. Since then, she's had some emotional stuff going on with her breakup, and I've been trying to be there for her, staying up late, comforting her and helping her out. About a week ago, Sam went to her mom's for Thanksgiving, and a few days later, she texted me saying her mom wanted her to move back home. She asked if she could come by the next day to get her stuff. Over the 6 weeks she stayed with me, Sam didn't pay for anything. When she moved out, she offered to pay the utilities for December. I sent her the bills and she sent me the money. But then, I woke up one morning to find I had been blocked everywhere by Sam. I was upset about it but also hurt because I'd gone through something similar with another person recently, and it stung to be treated like this again. I asked a mutual friend what happened, and she told me that Sam felt like I had too many rules and had a double standard. Specifically, Sam was upset because she said I had sex on my own mattress in my own room when Sam wasn't around, but got mad at her when she had sex in the shared bathroom. She also said she wasn't comfortable with the state of the apartment. To clarify, I work about 60 hours a week, while Sam only worked 2 or 3 days a week for 5-hour shifts. I had time to clean up around the apartment, but I was often busy with work. I did take her to and from work most days without asking for gas money, but on the few days I couldn't, I asked her to get an Uber. We had also planned to get a 2-bedroom apartment in March, once my lease was up for renewal, and I told Sam that until then, I just wanted her to pay utilities. She never expressed any issues with the boundaries I set. So, was I in the wrong for telling Sam she couldn't have sex in my bathroom? Am I the asshole for going off on my best friend by telling her the reason she talks down to me when frustrated is because she knows everyone else wouldn't put up with it? I, 25F, have been friends with my best friend, 26F, for over 10 years. Over the years, I've noticed that she tends to talk down to me, especially when she's stressed or anxious. I've always tried to look past it because I understand that she might be insecure or dealing with things on her own. She's a great friend in many ways and has helped me a lot. She even helped me raise money for my brain tumor treatments. However, over the past few months, her behavior has been getting harder to ignore, and I've started to get really frustrated with her. We agreed to go to the gym together, and while we were bench pressing, I noticed that the weight was too much for her. The bar was dipping to the sides, her back wasn't arched, and her shoulders were buckling. I politely suggested that she lower the weight, but she snapped, saying, "I know what I can do better than you. This isn't my first rodeo." Later, we planned a trip and booked an Airbnb. The reservation was under her name, so I sent her my share of the payment via Zelle. A week later, she tells me that the payment was automatically withdrawn by her credit card company before the Airbnb even charged her. I had to pay again, and she reimbursed me a month later. When I mentioned that I was frustrated about having to pay twice, she apologized but then insisted I just take the money when she had no groceries. I didn't know she was struggling, but I told her to take care of herself first before paying me back. A month after that, she asked me to teach her how to change her oil. I gathered all the tools and went over to her place, but the whole time I was showing her how to do it, she kept insisting she knew that already. But then she'd do things like loosen the oil filter cap in the wrong direction. I was just trying to help, but she kept brushing me off. Then, when we were planning a Thanksgiving dinner, I suggested we check if anyone had food allergies or restrictions, and she cut me off, saying, "That's why there's a group chat, please and thank you." I just felt completely dismissed. She's been apologizing a lot lately, saying she's struggling with life and that she doesn't always realize how she comes across. She's even given me acts of service as an apology. But honestly, my life is just as tough. I'm literally going deaf and blind, dealing with severe mental health issues, and suffering from ulcers so bad I taste blood. But I don't take it out on her or anyone else. Finally, I snapped. I told her, "You don't have to talk down to me to make a point, especially in front of other people. I've always respected you, but when others don't, you don't say anything. You're too comfortable talking to me like I'm dumb because you know everyone else wouldn't put up with it. Unlike them, you know I wouldn't body shame you, slut shame you, or remind you how stupid you are with money. You don't appreciate what you do for them, but at least take your frustrations out on yourself instead of me. Maybe you'd be a better friend." She started crying, and I've never seen her like that before. She apologized again, but I was so filled with anger that I just walked away. She texted me a few days ago saying she'd like to talk, but I haven't responded yet. I am open to making peace and continuing the friendship, but I'm still really mad. So, am I the asshole for saying all of that to her? Am I the asshole for rage quitting after losing an election? I, 28, female, have been a member of a large volunteer organization for several years. I'm one of the longest-standing members, having spent hundreds of hours contributing to various aspects of the organization. I've held smaller leadership roles across multiple areas and even have experience as the president of another organization. When I first joined, things weren't going well, so I, along with others, worked incredibly hard to improve the situation, and we succeeded. In fact, we improved things so much that the organization gained a massive influx of new members. These new members formed very close bonds, which we specifically encouraged, and they have no idea how bad things were before or how much work went into maintaining the progress we've made. I recently ran for president in the most recent election. I was up against 5 other candidates. 4 of us had years of experience and had been preparing our campaigns for months or even years. One candidate, let's call them Alex, was extremely new, having been in the organization for only a few weeks. Alex had no experience and decided to run for president at the last minute. However, Alex had a large friend group of other new members. Although Alex was barely eligible to run, they made the cut by just a few days. The election was extremely close between me and Alex, and I lost by just 1 vote. The rest of the newly elected officials were all new members from the same friend group, all of whom also lacked experience. After the election, it was discovered that 9 to 10 votes, specifically those of leadership members who worked closely with me, were not counted due to a computer error. These were the people who had voted for me, and I technically won the election. They tried to get the results overturned, but the higher-ups refused to allow it, fearing it would look like favoritism. In the end, I was told to keep quiet about the situation and not share the truth with anyone. Now, I find myself in a tough situation. Because the new executive team has no experience, I've started feeling a lot of pressure to take on a lower leadership position to help guide them and ensure all the hard work we've put in over the years doesn't fall apart. I've absolutely refused to do this. In fact, I've decided to drop all leadership roles and not take on any responsibilities this year. This decision has led to multiple people telling me that I don't care about the organization, and that if things fall apart, it'll be my fault. I feel like it's a slap in the face for them to expect me to step into a leadership role without the title that acknowledges my efforts. I've worked hard for years, and I don't want to just keep propping up a system that doesn't recognize my contributions. So, am I the asshole for dropping all leadership positions and letting the new team figure it out on their own? Update 1. Thank you all for your comments. I've read each one, and I'd like to clarify a few things. First of all, Claire is responsible for the cancellation of my baby shower. Mom and she have always been very close, so I'm sure it was my sister who first came up with the idea. Also, the day my baby shower was canceled, Claire sent me a message telling me not to be so sensitive about my event and that I shouldn't be so hard on Mom. She went on to say that she didn't want Mom to have to answer questions about her divorce all day and that my family should understand that. She also asked me to keep her affair with her boss a secret. Secondly, Mom tried calling me several times afterward, continuing to try to convince me and justify her actions. But this time, Matt wanted to talk to her. He started the conversation by telling her what he thought and making it clear how ridiculous it was for her to cancel my baby shower without my knowledge. He firmly stated that he would never allow her to meet our child if she continued to disrespect me so blatantly. My mom was surprised by this, but after what she did, I can't help but agree with my husband's decision. Lastly, my dad is not speaking to either my mom or my sister since he found out about what happened after they canceled my baby shower. Since then, he and my mom have argued and decided to organize a new one, where neither my mom nor my sister will be invited. I've also spoken to all my cousins, who reached out to check on me after receiving my mom's message about the canceled shower. Everyone agrees that my mom crossed the line, and they want nothing to do with her. Additionally, I've received messages from people asking why I never told my dad about how my maternal grandparents were influencing Claire's negative opinions about me. Honestly, I trusted that my mom would address the issue with Claire, as I didn't want to create unnecessary conflict in the family. Sometimes, as children, we find ourselves in situations where we have to stay silent, even when it's uncomfortable. As a child, I expected my mother to stand up for me and defend me against her parents, but unfortunately, that never happened. Clearly, she preferred her own daughter over her adopted one. As I mentioned, my trust and my world were deeply affected by my childhood experiences. Am I the asshole for forgetting a burger? So, I, 23F, got into a heated argument with my mom tonight over forgetting her burger, and now I'm wondering if I was in the wrong. Let me explain. I had a really long day. I finished a 5-hour exam, went straight to work, and didn't get home until 6:30 p.m. I didn't eat anything all day. No food, barely any water, and was feeling absolutely hangry. I wasn't being rude about it, though. I just knew I was hungry, and I told my mom I was going to Culver's to get food. She asked me to grab her an ice cream sundae since she'd already eaten dinner, which was fine. On my way there, she called me and added that I should grab her a burger too. Cool, no big deal, I can do that. Here's where things went wrong. I got home, sat down to eat, and realized I forgot the burger. The second I sat down, I was like, oh shoot. I told my mom calmly, I forgot your burger, but I'll get it after I finish eating. I had already mentioned how I hadn't eaten all day, and I was starving, so I thought it would be fine to eat first. But no. She started getting really upset, and I mean really upset. She kept nagging me with things like, OMG, how could you forget my burger? I called you on your way there. Why didn't you get it? It got to the point where I just snapped. I screamed out of frustration. I said I'll get it after I eat. I know I shouldn't have screamed, but I was frustrated. I didn't mean to be rude, but it's like, why is this a huge deal when she's already eaten and has her ice cream sundae? I wasn't refusing to get it. I just wanted to eat first because I was literally about to pass out from hunger. After I screamed, I did go and get her burger. But when I gave it to her, she threw it at my face because she didn't want it anymore after the whole ordeal. She was upset that I disrespected her by screaming downstairs in the living room. So, Reddit, AITA for forgetting her burger and for screaming in frustration.